Chapter 2302. Master, we're just going to sit back and reap the benefits. Baishur's eyes shone with excitement. He loved to be able to obtain treasures so effortlessly. If the three of them were to find out about this, they would probably vomit blood in anger. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slyly. If we're careful, we might actually succeed. However, we still need a little trick. Although Bailey Hongzhuang usually adhered to the principle of being open and above board, sometimes she would do some sneaky things, which was also harmless. My wife, what's your plan? Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's mischievous smile, Di Beichen knew that Bailey Hongzhuang already had a plan in mind. It's simple. We'll sneak to the other side of the mountain. The blood essence demon fruit is there. The Red Flame Lion King is already locked in battle with the three of them. It won't be able to determine the victor in a short period of time. We'll take advantage of this time to pluck the blood essence demon fruit and enter the chaos ring. This way, the Red Flame Lion King will definitely think that we're in cahoots with the three of them. Since it won't be able to sense our aura, it will definitely place all its hatred on the three of them. Although the three of them know that they've fallen into our trap, it won't be of any use even if they try to explain to the Red Flame Lion King. They'll definitely run away immediately, and the enraged Red Flame Lion King will chase after them. Once they've all left, we'll be able to leave as well. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had already come up with a plan. This was the best way to reap the benefits. After understanding Bailey Hongzhuang's plan, Di Beichen and Baishur could not help but give her a thumbs up. Brilliant. Truly brilliant. My wife's intelligence is truly admirable. Di Beichen could not help but chuckle. Bailey Hongzhuang was truly adorable when she was being crafty. This was more in line with her age. Since you've all agreed, shall we take action? No problem. 2 men and 1 beast quickly launched into action. The elemental energy in the air had already been stirred up, and the aftermath of the battle was constantly spreading. Under such circumstances, the Red Flame Lion King, Big Brother, and the other 2 did not have the time to pay attention to their surroundings. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had hidden their auras very well. A moment later, a blood-red fruit appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang, the woman, and the beast. The blood-red fruit flickered with a sparkling luster. It was extremely red and emitted a demonic aura. With a single glance, he could tell that this was no ordinary fruit, but a treasure of heaven and earth. A faint fragrance wafted out from the fruit, making people feel refreshed. This is the blood essence demon fruit. Di Beichen's black whirlpool-like eyes flashed with sigh. He had learned a lot about the blood essence demon fruit, but he was still shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. The treasures brewed by heaven and earth were indeed extraordinary. One could feel the abundant energy within the blood essence demon fruit just by sensing it. My wife, this blood essence demon fruit does not seem to have fully matured. If we pluck it now, will it harm its medicinal effects? If such a treasure was wasted just like that, it would truly be a waste of God's gift. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and said, "Don't worry, I have an idea." Chapter 2303. Heavenly treasures would only be at their best when they are fully ripe. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were in no condition to wait for the blood essence fruit to fully ripen. However, the blood essence fruit in front of them was close to ripening. Furthermore, Bailey Hongzhuang had found a treasure in the chaos ring. As long as they could bring the blood essence fruit back, she would be able to cultivate it. Seeing how confident Bailey Hongzhuang was, Di Beichen did not ask any more questions. He immediately began to observe the situation. The 3 of them had already sustained some injuries, but the Red Flame Lion King was still full of battle intent. Di Beichen noticed that this Red Flame Lion King was much more powerful than the village chief's Red Flame Lion King. It was probably a Red Flame Lion King that was about to evolve. Against a demonic beast of this level, if one was not strong enough, one would not be able to gain the upper hand. Come to think of it, he could only sigh at how unlucky these 3 were. They had spent so much effort only to be the guide for this one time. Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were very fast. She had prepared some tools before, so she quickly dug out the blood essence demon fruit. Di Beichen, Baishur, get into the chaos ring. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's orders, Di Beichen and Baishur immediately understood and followed Bailey Hongzhuang into the Chaos Ring. The three of them were trying their best to deal with the Red Flame Lion King. Their injuries were already very serious. However, it had not been easy for them to get here. If they were to give up now, all their efforts would have been for naught. Suddenly, the Red Flame Lion King's eyes turned red. It no longer cared about the three of them and charged to the side, because at that moment, it suddenly realized that the Blood Essence Fruit's aura had disappeared. It had guarded the Blood Essence Fruit for so many years and was very familiar with its aura. However, at that moment, the Blood Essence Fruit's aura had disappeared. It had completely disappeared. The three of them still did not understand what had caused the Red Flame Lion King to fly into such a rage. However, a white porcelain bottle suddenly landed in front of them. Seeing this white porcelain vase, the three people's faces instantly turned ugly. Boss picked up the white porcelain bottle and carefully sensed it. He discovered that the aura on the white porcelain bottle belonged to the cultivator who was following them. Damn it, that guy is following us again, the boss said with a gloomy face. As soon as he said that, Little Fool and Ah-san looked at each other. They both had a bad feeling about this. Boss, why is the Red Flame Lion King so angry? Could it be that the Blood Essence Demon Fruit was taken? When they thought of this possibility, the Red Flame Lion King turned around and glared at them as if they were its sworn enemies. We've been set up. Let's go. Even though the three of them were enraged to the extreme, the only thing they could do now was to flee. Previously, when the Red Flame Lion King was not enraged, it was already extremely difficult for them to deal with it. Now that the Red Flame Lion King had gone berserk, they might not even be able to keep their lives. As for the matter of the Blood Essence Demon Fruit being taken away, they could only swallow this loss. The three of them quickly ran down the mountain. However, the Red Flame Lion King had no intention of letting them go. It chased after them all the way. Clearly, it would not stop until it killed them. Chapter 2304. The Red Flame Lion King had gone completely mad. It had been guarding the Blood Essence Demon Fruit for so many years, and it had finally gotten the chance to evolve. Now that the Blood Essence Demon Fruit had disappeared right in front of its eyes, it could not tolerate it. The three of them used all of their abilities to escape, but the Red Flame Lion King was too fast. It was not easy to escape. After the previous battle, the three of them had used up more than half of their elemental energy and were panting heavily. Boss, why did that guy throw you a white porcelain bottle? Little Fool was in despair. They had been running for so long, but the Red Flame Lion King was still chasing after them. He was almost out of energy. Hearing Little Fool's words, the boss looked at the white porcelain bottle in his hand. He had been so focused on escaping that he had forgotten about the bottle. I don't know. There seems to be something else here, but it's most likely not something good. The boss looked at the white porcelain bottle in his hand and wished he could crush it. They had spent so much energy only to let the other party reap the benefits. How dare the other party be so arrogant as to tell him about it? How despicable. However, when the boss opened the white porcelain bottle, he couldn't help but be stunned. Boss, what's wrong? Little Fool asked when he saw the boss's stunned expression. There are pills inside. The boss recognized the type of pills at a glance. They were pills for healing and pills for replenishing elemental energy. They were exactly what they needed right now. In the next moment, the boss handed the pills to Little Fool and Little Fool. Quick, take them. Little Fool and Little Fool were stunned. When they saw the pills in their hands, they swallowed them without hesitation. To them, this was a life-saving pill. Boss, did that guy predict that we would be in such a situation, so he gave it to us? It should be. In that moment, the three of them were speechless. The reason why they were in such a situation was all because of that guy who had been following them. But now it was that guy's pills that saved them. At that moment, the three of them did not know how to feel about that guy. At least in their hearts, that guy was not as annoying as before. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Baishur emerged from the Chaos Ring after the Red Flame Lion King chased after the three of them. Seeing that everything was going as she expected, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but smile. My wife is indeed a genius. You managed to obtain the blood essence demon fruit without any effort. Di Beichun was full of praise. This situation was much easier than he had expected. You flatter me. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Master, what did you throw at them earlier? Baisher looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. Previously, it had seen its master casually throw something out, but before it could see clearly, they had already escaped into the chaos ring. It had always been curious. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slyly. It's just some pills. The Red Flame Lion King will definitely chase after these three for a long time. Without the pills, I'm afraid that they won't be able to keep their lives. Speaking of which, these three guys were really unlucky to have met her. No matter what, she was still very grateful to these three guys. If it wasn't for them, how could she have obtained the blood essence demon fruit? Chapter 2305. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun and Baisher finally understood. It was indeed a pity that the three of them had died just like that. We don't know when the Red Flaming Lion King will return. Let's leave quickly. Di Beichun scanned his surroundings. Beasts like the Red Flaming Lion King were extremely sensitive. There was no telling when it would return. If they caught the three of them, but did not manage to find the blood essence demon fruit, they would be in big trouble once they returned. Following which, the two of them quickly left the mountain peak and returned to the inn. Xiao Feilin and the rest were relieved when they saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had returned safely. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang had mysteriously disappeared, everyone was worried. Junior Sister Bailey, where have you been these few days? Everyone was worried that something had happened to you. Xiao Feiyu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with concern. In the entire team, there were only the two of them. Hence, Xiao Feiyu and Bailey Hongzhuang's relationship had become much closer. I ran into some problems and was delayed for a few days. I'm really sorry for making everyone worry about me. Hearing this, everyone waved their hands and said, Junior Sister Bailey, as long as you return safely, we can all be at ease. The team was filled with joy and harmony. In the following days, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun did not continue to train in the training grounds. Both of them had good reflexes. In order to save time, they decided to stay in the inn and train in the desert world. The time spent in the desert world was much longer than the outside world. In addition, there were countless beasts in the desert world. It was no different from training in the outside world. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to train with them in the desert world, they were extremely happy. They were already used to training with their master every day. Now that they could continue to train together, it was undoubtedly the best thing that could happen. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's training on the stairway to heaven, her training speed increased again. Di Beichun could only absorb elemental energy as usual. Hence, Bailey Hongzhuang was also using this opportunity to catch up with Di Beichun's training. No matter if it was Bailey Hongzhuang or Di Beichun, both of them were extremely talented. Bailey Hongzhuang's training speed was extremely fast, but so was Di Beichun's. As a result, it was hard to close the gap between the two of them, and now was the best time to catch up. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang and's training, the disciples were also immersed in their training. They spent most of their time cultivating in their respective sects and didn't have many opportunities to spar. Now, not only were there countless beasts in the Bloody Ground Abyss, there were also many cultivators who would start a fight if there was a disagreement. This was a good opportunity for them to increase their strength. Although they would often return with injuries, their strength would increase in an orderly manner. Hence, everyone was extremely happy. 2 months passed by quickly. Beichun, there's only half a month before the Battle of Zhuolu begins. I have to head to Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang calculated the time. They had been out for so long. Before the Battle of Zhuolu begins, she had to make a trip back to Limitless Palace. Chapter 2306. My wife, you must be careful on your journey. Di Beichun's eyes flashed with concern. The Battle of Zhuolu was just around the corner, and he had to lead his disciples back to the Tiangang sect. Bailey Hongzhuang gently nodded. Her ink-black, jade-like eyes flashed with a gentle and moving light. Her voice was soft and affectionate. Yes, Di Beichun, I'll see you at the Battle of Zhualu. She had prepared for so long, and the Battle of Zhualu had finally begun. During the Battle of Zhualu, she would meet the Lan family and Lan Qingyan. After more than 10 years of intertwining fate now, it was time to rewrite it. My wife, I'll wait for you. Di Beichen reached out and pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. From the moment the Battle of Zhualu began, it was time for Bailey Hongzhuang to face the Lan family. No matter what happened next, he would always stand firmly by Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Thank you for waiting for me for so long. Bailey Hongzhuang rested her chin on Di Beichen's shoulder. She was reluctant to part with his familiar and warm embrace. Ever since she had been together with Di Beichen, she had missed him for a long time. He had always been waiting for her to openly reclaim her identity. Actually, her name was not Bailey Hongzhuang. Her real name was Lan Yishuan. Because of that SL*T, she had been living under a different name for so many years. From now on, she would let everyone know her true identity as Bailey Hongzhuang. Di Beichen had always known that Bailey Hongzhuang had an obsession in her heart. If she had not found her true identity, if she had not found her parents' dignity, no matter how comfortable her life was, there would always be a part of her heart that would never be at peace. That part would never be truly happy. He was willing to wait. He would wait until Bailey Hongzhuang no longer had a knot in her heart. He would let everyone know that he, Di Beichen, was going to marry the second lady of the Lan family, the granddaughter of the Sun Moon Palace's palace master and the granddaughter of the Heavenly Dipper sect's sect master. She had never been a nameless pawn and would never be unworthy of him. Di Beichen. On the contrary, it was Di Beichen who was lucky enough to marry Lan Yishuan. Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai could not help but cover their eyes when they saw how lovey-dovey Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were. Master and Di Beichen's relationship was getting better and better. Often, a casual conversation could make them blush and their hearts race. However, they were beasts with moral integrity. When faced with such a situation, they would take the initiative to cover their eyes. Of course, he would steal a few glances from time to time. Xiao Feiyu and the rest were shocked when they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to leave the group. Junior sister Bailey, where are you going by yourself instead of returning to Tiangang's sect with us? It was already strange that Bailey Hongzhuang did not participate in the Battle of Zhualu. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang was going to leave the group, it was a little too strange. I still have some things to do, so I will leave for now. I will meet everyone again soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face rippled with a smile like a lotus flower. She could feel everyone's goodwill towards her. She was very happy when she entered Tiangang's sect and was doubted everywhere. Now that she was completely accepted by everyone, she was very happy. Chapter 2307. Bailey Hongzhuang brought the three beasties and headed towards Limitless Palace. Now that she was strong enough to take charge, she didn't need to worry about any dangers along the way. It was because of this that Di Beichen was assured to let her head towards Limitless Palace. If it was in the past, Di Beichen would definitely not allow it. Just from this point, one could see how much she had improved. Master, the journey to Limitless Palace is very long. By the time we reach Limitless Palace, I'm afraid that the battle of supremacy would have already begun. Xiao Hei's expression revealed some helplessness. It was a pity that there weren't any flying beasts that could fly directly to Limitless Palace. They could only rely on their own two legs. Even though their current speed was much faster than before, they still needed to spend a lot of time on the journey. Bailey Hongzhuang flicked Xiao Hei's head and said, Xiao Hei, you're sitting on my shoulders now. The ones rushing on the journey are me and Bai Shi. You still have the cheek to complain? Cough, cough. Xiao Hei couldn't help but feel guilty. Master, I'm just feeling sorry for you. Who asked you to not have a pair of wings? Otherwise, you would be able to carry me and fly. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. Speaking of which, flying beasts were also the dream beasts of cultivators. If she could have a flying mount, she would be able to save a lot of time and trouble. However, this type of contracted beast was extremely rare. If she had the chance, she would like to find one. Instantly, the three beasties' heads drooped. They still had some confidence in other things, but when it came to flying, they really didn't have any ideas. During the process of White Dew, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't stay idle. She executed fulgurating shadows all the way and maximized her speed to the extreme. Movement techniques were very useful in battle. The more she used them and the more proficient she was at it, the better the effect would be during the battle. Now that they were rushing on the journey, she didn't have any chance to cultivate. She could only practice fulgurating shadows. Finally, Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at Limitless Palace. Compared to the trouble when she arrived at Limitless Palace for the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang now had a token. After showing it to the gatekeeper, she successfully entered Limitless Palace. Hongzhuang, you're finally back. The Battle of Supremacy Palace will depart tomorrow. I was worried that you wouldn't be able to make it in time. The moment Nangong Wu saw Bailey Hongzhuang, a smile had already occupied her face. Mistress, I'm sorry. I'm late. Nangong Wu waved her hand. I know you've been busy cultivating recently. It's fine as long as you make it in time. I haven't seen you for almost a year since we parted that day. Now, you become even more beautiful. Nangong Wu looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in admiration. Bailey Hongzhuang was getting more and more beautiful. She was less immature and more beautiful. Di Baichen really picked up a big bargain this time. If he didn't grab Bailey Hongzhuang's heart early on, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang walked around in front of those young elites, she would definitely be the target of everyone's pursuit. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang blushed and said, Mistress, you're overpraising me. Yu Linfeng heard the news and came over. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, he revealed a comfortable smile. Hongzhuang, you really came at the right time. Greetings, Master. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed respectfully. Yu Linfeng was her most respected master. He had helped her a lot in her cultivation. Chapter 23:08. I came a little late. I hope Master will forgive me. It's good as long as you're here. Since I let you cultivate with Di Baichen, I naturally thought that you wouldn't come early. Yu Linfeng's face was filled with a loving smile. He knew that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen had a very good relationship. That was why he didn't let Bailey Hongzhuang return to Limitless Palace to cultivate. Looking at Yu Linfeng's knowing expression, Bailey Hongzhuang blushed in embarrassment. Hongzhuang, this time you're participating in the Battle of Zhuolu as the leader of Limitless Palace. You've already met a portion of Limitless Palace's disciples. They're the core disciples. There's also a portion of them who are also core disciples. It's just that they've been cultivating in seclusion, so you haven't met them yet. I've left a spot for you and told everyone about your identity. However, you'll have to settle the conflicts between the disciples by yourself. Yu Linfeng's voice was gentle and elegant. The meaning behind his words was very obvious. As the palace master of Limitless Palace, he could naturally help Bailey Hongzhuang dispel the disciples' suspicions and dissatisfaction. However, since Bailey Hongzhuang was a chosen successor, she naturally needed to have the ability to take charge and lead. It's always good for a young person to have more setbacks. If there's someone to help her settle everything along the way, then her improvement would naturally be small. Recently, Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't appeared. The disciples and young palace master had a lot of guesses. After all, he had never talked about this matter. He only announced it after the Battle of Zhuolu was decided. Moreover, he didn't mention Bailey Hongzhuang's name. He felt that this was a good opportunity to let Bailey Hongzhuang introduce herself. It was better than him, the master, introducing her. Linfeng, for this matter, why don't you introduce Hongzhuang to everyone tomorrow? It'll save us some trouble. The battle for the throne is an extremely important competition. If the disciples were to have internal strife because of this, wouldn't it affect Limitless Palace's results? Nangong Wu frowned slightly. It was obviously a very simple matter, but Yu Linfeng liked to make it complicated. Wu-er, I have my reasons for doing this. Listening to Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood Yu Linfeng's deep meaning. This was Yu Linfeng's test for her. Master, I will definitely handle this matter properly. Please rest assured. Along the way, her master had already paved the way for her. If she couldn't even convince her teammates, then she would be letting her master down. When she knew that she was going to participate in the battle of martial arts as the young palace master of Limitless Palace, she was already prepared to face all of this. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang accepted it calmly and didn't feel that it was a problem at all, the admiration in Yu Linfeng's eyes deepened. These days, he could feel that Bailey Hongzhuang had been cultivating on this stairway every day. It could be seen how hard-working she was. It hadn't even been a year since they separated. Bailey Hongzhuang had improved so much. He had a whole new level of respect for her. Originally, he thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would have a hard time facing all of this with her strength. However, after sensing Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, he was completely relieved. Master believes in you. Chapter 2309. Hongzhuang, you're going to meet Lan Qingyin after the Battle of the Deer, right? Nangong Wu's eyes suddenly flashed with an excited and dazzling light. She had always hated the Lan family to the core. It was just that Yu Linfeng normally did not interact with the Lan family, so she did not have the opportunity to make the Lan family unhappy. The relationship between Lan Qingyin and Bailey Hongzhuang was so deep. Once they met in the Battle of the Deer, the situation would be extremely exciting. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her clear eyes were covered with a layer of enchanting luster, and her expression was more ruthless. After so many years, we're finally going to meet. She had hated Lan Qingyin for so many years, but Lan Qingyin had always treated her as a dead person. Presumably, when Lan Qingyin found out that she was still alive and not dead, the situation would be very exciting. Seeing the sudden change in Bailey Hongzhuang's expression, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu looked at each other. The hatred in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart towards Lan Qingyin's family was probably deeper than they had imagined. However, after experiencing what happened in the past, this hatred would be deeply rooted. Although Lan Qingyin has been famous for a long time, it's only because of the rainbow pearl. Hongzhuang, a fake is a fake. You're the one who is truly chosen by the rainbow pearl. Once they compete, the real and fake will naturally be revealed. Nangong Wu's words were full of disdain towards Lan Qingyin. These years, although Lan Qingyin's reputation was very resounding, this woman didn't do anything outstanding. On the contrary, her arrogant and despotic reputation would occasionally spread. As a disciple of an aristocratic family, being arrogant and despotic was nothing. As long as one's strength was strong enough, that was enough. However, for such a person to be the next clan head of the Lan family, this was a bit ridiculous. If it wasn't for Lan Qingyin snatching away Bailey Hongzhuang's rainbow pearl with her personality, it was impossible for her to be recognized as the next patriarch. Yu Linfeng looked deeply at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Hongzhuang, Master believes that you are the most outstanding. From the moment he chose Bailey Hongzhuang as a successor, he believed that Bailey Hongzhuang was the most outstanding. Even though your current strength may not be comparable to Lan Qingyin's, it won't be long before your strength surpasses hers. No matter what, you have to be confident in yourself and in the path of martial arts. No matter how terrifying the opponent is, it doesn't matter. As long as we don't give up, victory will definitely belong to us. You, on the other hand, were born to be the pride of the heavens. If you hadn't been delayed for so many years, your current achievements would definitely be the center of attention. Master always believed that no matter what tribulation heaven throws at us, it will always send us another gift. Tempering is the most precious wealth. These sincere and heartfelt words were full of Yu Linfeng's concern for Bailey Hongzhuang. Lan Qingyin was nurtured as the next clan head of the Lan family since she was young. The entire family used all their resources to nurture her. Naturally, her strength was needless to say. Bailey Hongzhuang experienced the shattering of her dantian, and her cultivation was delayed by so many years. Yet, she was able to catch up to this extent. Just this point alone was enough to prove that Bailey Hongzhuang was stronger than Lan Qingyin. However, catching up still required some time. Chapter 2310. Feeling Yu Linfeng's deep concern, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was moved. A feeling of being touched quickly spread in her heart. Whether it was her master or her master, they were all sincerely concerned about her. She couldn't help but feel touched. She understood her master's meaning. She was worried that she would lose to Lan Qinyan after putting in so much effort to prepare. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart wasn't that fragile. For so many years, she had always been in a state of catching up. So what if she had to catch up for a longer time? Moreover, she had a lot of trump cards. She didn't know if she could defeat Lan Qinyan now, but she at least had the ability to contend against Lan Qinyan. Whether she won or lost, she wouldn't lose anything. On the contrary, Lan Qinyan was the one who couldn't bear it the most. Master, no matter what the result is, it won't damage my martial heart. With just a simple sentence, Bailey Hongzhuang had already answered all of Yu Linfeng's worries. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang in high spirits without the slightest bit of effort, Yu Linfeng and Nan Gongwu also revealed a comfortable and relaxed smile. Although the Battle of Zhuolu was important, they were more concerned about Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, tomorrow is the day we depart for the Battle of Zhuolu. Let me first introduce you to the situation of the Battle of Zhuolu, as well as the situation of our limitless palaces past Battle of Zhuolu. Yu Linfeng's expression was somewhat serious. The Battle of Zhuolu was a competition to measure the strength of each force. If they could obtain a good ranking in the Battle of Zhuolu, they would be able to gain more respect from other forces. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Previously, she only knew a little about the Battle of Zhuolu, but she wasn't very clear about it. After all, each force had a different view of the Battle of Zhuolu. Their arrangements were also different. Bailey Hongzhuang naturally couldn't use the situation of Tiangang's sect to lead the disciples of Limitless Palace. Di Beichun didn't say much to her in this regard. Instead, they spent all their time on cultivation. Every sect and aristocratic family will participate in the Battle of Zhuolu. Of course, the medicine sect and the Yu family are exceptions. Because they were not proficient in martial arts, most of them would not participate in the Battle of Wulu. Since so many forces were participating together, there was naturally competition. Everyone wanted to obtain the best results. The situation of the battle for Divine Throne is slightly similar to the assessment that you participated in before, but this is the real competition between the geniuses. Bailey Hongzhuang listened attentively to Yu Linfeng's introduction. Every bit of information was very important. From Yu Linfeng's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang understood the rules of the battle for the throne. As it turned out, the Battle of Zhuolu was also a small world. It was filled with various fortuitous encounters and treasures. These were all taken out by the various forces as a reward for the young cultivators. Although the items taken out by the various forces weren't the best, they wouldn't be bad either. After all, this kind of thing involved the issue of competition. Therefore, this Battle of Zhuolu was an extremely good opportunity for many cultivators who weren't successors. If they could obtain abundant cultivation resources, their cultivation speed would naturally increase greatly. Chapter 23:11. Every cultivator had their own number plate. What they had to do in the Battle of Zhuolu was to snatch their own number plates. The more number plates they snatched, the higher their ranking would be. Heavenly treasures were all treasures that cultivators could obtain and were not included in the results. The only thing that counted was the number of number plates they had. Not only that, when the results were tallied, it would not only include the number plates they had, it would also include the number plates they had as a whole. From these two aspects, each group's strength would be judged. Because of this, the Battle of Zhuolu did not only depend on an individual's battle prowess, but also the strength of the group. Hence, unity was extremely important. Every group would choose their successors to lead the group. Because of this, the disciples would be most convinced. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had yet to meet the participating disciples of Limitless Palace. On this point, she had already fallen behind the other groups. If she was unable to make everyone trust her in a short period of time and listen to her arrangements, then after the Battle of Zhuolu, the group would be a bunch of loose sand. Compared to the other groups, they would not be able to withstand a single blow. Every single cultivator who was able to participate in the Battle of Zhuolu was not weak. Hence, unity was extremely important. After understanding all the rules, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. The rules were simple and clear. As long as one could snatch the number plate, that would be enough. Master, I understand. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes shone with a wise light. In her previous life, she had also understood some of the competitions. Many times, the more there were no rules, the more intense the competition would be. Because to snatch the number plate, there was no other way to calculate the results. Hence, this forced the groups to clash head-on to determine the winner. This was a direct confrontation between outstanding cultivators. It depended on strength and brains. In this way, whoever managed to snatch the number of number plates would be able to prove their strength from another perspective. Perhaps the closer one got to the center of the Battle of Zhuolu, the more intense the confrontation would be. Hongzhuang, there will be casualties in this Battle of Zhuolu. Hence, you must be extra careful. Although everyone hopes that there will be no casualties, as long as it is a competition between cultivators, casualties are unavoidable. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded her head. Master, don't worry. I will take good care of my teammates. This time, she was not participating in the Battle of Zhuolu alone, but as a whole. Every single cultivator was part of Limitless Palace's strength. They could not lose their lives in the Battle of Zhuolu. Hongzhuang, at times, the Battle of Zhuolu could be very fierce. Some sects had grudges against each other. Every time there was a battle for supremacy, it would be a bloodbath. There were also cases where an entire army would be wiped out. Battle of Zhuolu. Our Limitless Palace has not been established for long. Although we have a certain status and influence in the Shengxian continent, we have very few enemies and allies. This is not good news for you. As she spoke, Nangong Wu's eyes suddenly lit up. However, with Hongzhuang as our leader, the Tiangang sect and the Sun Moon Palace are our allies, so there will be fewer problems. Chapter 23:12. The sun shone brightly and the sky was high. Today was the day that the teams would depart for the Battle of Deer. Hence, the participating disciples of Limitless Palace were all ready to depart early in the morning. At a glance, they were all in high spirits and full of confidence. However, when everyone saw the empty seat of the team leader, they couldn't help but mutter in their hearts. We're supposed to depart for the Battle of Deer today. Why haven't we seen the team leader yet? Could it be that the team leader hasn't returned yet? Then what are we going to do in the Battle of Deer? Ever since they found out that the team leader was the young palace master of Limitless Palace, everyone couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This was because they had never heard of any news regarding the young palace master before this. However, since it was announced by the palace master, then it was naturally true. During this period of time, everyone was very curious about the identity of the young palace master. However, after waiting for so long, the young palace master still hadn't appeared. This made everyone feel a little anxious. To be able to participate in the Battle of Deer was an excellent opportunity for any cultivator. On one hand, they could represent the sect in the battle and win glory for the sect. On the other hand, they could display their strength on this big stage. Although most of the time, the person who obtained first place was the successor, there was also the possibility of an ordinary disciple appearing. No one was willing to give up on this possibility. However, the young palace master had yet to appear. If they didn't have a leader in the Battle of Deer, then wouldn't their team be at a disadvantage right from the start? Not only the participating disciples, but the other disciples of Limitless Palace also rushed out early in the morning. They all wanted to know who the young palace master was. Just as everyone was discussing, Yulin Feng and Nangong Wu's figures slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. Behind the two of them, there was a young and beautiful figure. Greetings to the palace master and palace madam. Everyone bowed respectfully. Yulin Feng nodded slightly. His gaze then landed on Bailey Hongzhuang and said, Hongzhuang, you can return to the team. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang appeared in front of everyone, almost everyone's eyes were focused on her. Even though the palace master did not say much, from the way Bailey Hongzhuang appeared, everyone was able to determine that this person was the young palace master of Limitless Palace. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang had already changed into Limitless Palace's disciple uniform. She was wearing a light, golden patterned robe that was noble and elegant, just like the buildings of Limitless Palace. The golden sunlight shone on her body, accentuating her nobility and peerless beauty. Her gorgeous face revealed a bit of heroic spirit, and when she looked serious, it was impossible for people to associate her with a vase. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang's aura had already revealed that she was definitely not weak. It's actually her. Pei Yifan stared at Bailey Hongzhuang with wide eyes, his face full of disbelief. Pei Yifan wasn't the only one who recognized Bailey Hongzhuang. Some of the disciples in the group also recognized Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang went to the back of the mountain to cultivate with them, everyone was guessing the identity of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, a cultivator who could be brought by the palace master and palace madam was definitely not simple. Chapter 23:13. Isn't this woman's the one who came with Tian Gang, Sect's young sect master? So she's actually our young palace master? It's really hard to guess. I've only seen her come to the sect once. I rarely see her on normal days. She really keeps a low profile. We have to be careful in the future. Our young palace master will be our palace master in the future. Gazes of envy and worship fell on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. As a cultivator, who didn't dream of becoming the master of a sect one day, all along, Limitless Palace didn't have any news about their young palace master. On one hand, it was because the palace master was still very young. On the other hand, it was because the palace master and his wife didn't have any children. Under such circumstances, many outstanding disciples would do their best to show off their talents. They wanted the palace master and his wife to see them in a different light. No one would have thought that the palace master had already chosen their young palace master. This made some people feel discouraged. Bailey Hongzhuang saw Pei Yifan looking at her in a daze. Her lips slowly curved into a faint smile. When she was cultivating in Limitless Palace, Pei Yifan was the only one who showed some kindness to her. Therefore, she had a deep impression of Pei Yifan. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang smile, Pei Yifan realized that he was being rude. He retracted his gaze embarrassedly. Bailey Hongzhuang is my Limitless Palace's young palace master. Previously, I sent her out to settle some matters. That's why she's meeting with everyone today. Yu Linfeng's gentle voice slowly rang out. It clearly entered everyone's ears. After receiving Yu Linfeng's confirmation, everyone sighed. At the same time, they understood why Bailey Hongzhuang didn't appear before them. I believe everyone knows the meaning and danger of the Battle of Zhuolu. I hope that everyone can work together and achieve a good result in the Battle of Zhuolu. This is a stage that belongs to you youngsters. You have the courage to fight and fight. This is the courage of youngsters. You have to tell everyone the true strength of our Limitless Palace. Tell me, do you have the confidence? Yu Linfeng's voice was sonorous. This was a stage for the cultivators of various forces to vie for supremacy. Even though Limitless Palace had only been established in the Shengxian continent for a short period of time, their aura and confidence were not weaker than anyone else's. The disciples of Limitless Palace would not be any worse than the disciples of other powers. Hearing Yu Linfeng's words, the disciples all felt their blood boil. Previously, they were all thinking of achieving good results in the battle of vying for deer. But now, after hearing Yu Linfeng's words, a sense of honor for their sect quickly rose in their hearts. They were disciples of Limitless Palace. From the moment they participated in the Battle of Zhuolu, all of their actions represented Limitless Palace. They were bound together for good or ill. Yes, the disciples shouted one after another. They had worked so hard to cultivate for so long just to let the entire Shengxian continent know their strength. Yu Linfeng revealed a look of satisfaction when he saw the excitement in the disciples' eyes. The vigor of the disciples of Limitless Palace would definitely not lose to anyone else. Very good. Yu Linfeng nodded. This is the true strength of our Limitless Palace's disciples. Chapter 23:14. For a moment, all the participating disciples felt their blood boiling. They were the heroes of Limitless Palace. For this honor, they were willing to give it their all. Before we enter the battle for deer, I have one more thing to tell everyone. Yu Linfeng's voice was less sonorous and more gentle. His gaze swept across Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. All of you are outstanding disciples of the palace. I hope that you will be able to achieve good results in the battle for deer. However, I hope that all of you will be able to return safely." Once these words were spoken, all the disciples were moved. All of them understood how important the battle for deer was to the palace. Every time the battle for deer's ranking was related to the palace's right to speak. If they ended up at the bottom, they would be ridiculed by everyone. However, under such circumstances, they never thought that the palace master would be most concerned about their safety. So, you can work hard, you can fight hard. However, all of this must be done under the premise of your own safety. If all of you are no longer around, then this ranking will be of no use to the palace. Everyone, do you understand? We understand. It was these warm and caring words that made everyone want to work hard to achieve good results for Limitless Palace. In fact, the palace master had always treated them extremely well. He did not have the same restrictions as the other sects. Even when the palace master appeared, he had an amiable look and did not put on any airs. Many people felt that Limitless Palace had only been established for a short period of time. However, they were very clear that Limitless Palace was not inferior to the other sects in any aspect. To be able to become a disciple of Limitless Palace was their pride. Then everyone, get ready to set off. Yulin Feng's face was filled with smiles as he led the participating disciples towards the teleportation array. Every battle for deer was held at a specific location. Hence, every sect had their own teleportation array. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest followed closely behind the palace master and the elders. They were filled with curiosity towards the upcoming battle for deer. Very quickly, everyone arrived at the teleportation array. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang was no stranger to the teleportation array. However, there were still many disciples who were amazed when they saw the teleportation array. The battle for deer will last for 3 months. After 3 months, we will be here to pick you up. Yulin Feng smiled faintly. The battle for deer was not long. It could be seen that the battle for deer did not have a large area. Within 3 months, there would be many clashes. The faces of the disciples were filled with anticipation. They had long heard of how amazing the Battle of Zhuolu was and how many treasures there were. If they were lucky, they would be able to raise their cultivation by quite a bit in the next 3 months. Now, everyone, enter the teleportation array. Grand Elder Gu Taihong's voice rang out. In the next moment, everyone walked into the teleportation array and felt a kind of energy surround them. Then, when they opened their eyes again, they were already in another place. This was a lush and verdant world. The sun shone brightly and the air was fresh. It was like an otherworldly paradise, making one feel comfortable. Chapter 23:15. We should be at the edge of the battle of Zhuolu now. The possibility of encountering cultivators from other forces isn't high. However, the closer we get, the higher the possibility of encountering them. Bailey Hongzhuang was very familiar with this situation. It was just like the assessment competition. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone had different expressions. Although they already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang was the young palace master, they didn't have any understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang before this. They weren't familiar with her. Not only that, Bailey Hongzhuang looked extremely young. She was probably the youngest person in their team. At such a young age, her cultivation shouldn't be that strong. Under such circumstances, it was difficult to convince the entire team to listen to her commands. After all, as a cultivator, strength was always the most important. It was hard for a strong person to accept the orders of a weak person. Everyone knew that it wasn't enough to convince others with just one's identity. Only by displaying the ability to convince others would they accept it from the bottom of their hearts. In an instant, the cultivators had different expressions. They were all loyal to Limitless Palace and would listen to the palace master's orders. However, they couldn't help but wonder. Since Bailey Hongzhuang was able to become the young palace master of Limitless Palace, she must have something outstanding about her. However, they didn't know what it was. Master, this group of people are really unconvinced by you. Xiaohei understood after seeing everyone's expression. Although everyone knew about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity, they still had to show some of their true abilities. We expected this situation long ago. However, Our master is someone with true abilities. She's not afraid at all. Xiaobai looked proud. In fact, their master's abilities had never been weak. Previously, there were so many people who were unconvinced in Tiangang's sect because their master didn't intend to bother with them. Now that their master's strength was much stronger than before, she could definitely convince this group of people. Bailey Hongzhuang sized up everyone's expression. The Battle of Zhuelu would last for 3 months. They didn't need to be anxious. Rather than having conflicts later on due to differences of opinion, it was better to take advantage of this opportunity to completely eliminate this hidden danger. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly took a step forward and stood in front of everyone. I know that everyone doesn't know much about me and has some doubts about my strength and leadership. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's expression changed. They did have such an idea in their minds, but they did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to take the initiative to bring it up. Pei Yifan and the others looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. When Bailey Hongzhuang taught Chu Yingfei a lesson, they had seen Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Based on Bailey Hongzhuang's age, it was already very outstanding for her to possess such power. However, in the battle for the throne, everyone was not looking at potential but power. Back then, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength had not been comparable to Pei Yifan's, but now, her strength should be comparable to Pei Yifan's. One had to know that Pei Yifan's strength was only average in the team. Chapter 23:16. For the next 3 months, we will all be teammates. As the team leader, I naturally hope that everyone will have the same goal and listen to each other's opinions. Every team participating in the Battle of Zhuelu is extremely powerful. If we don't work together and are scattered, it will be impossible for us to achieve a good result. So, if anyone is unconvinced of my strength, you can step forward now. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone looked at each other. None of them thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so honest. Bailey Hongzhuang stood quietly at the same spot. Her expression was indifferent. Tiangang's sect was an extremely powerful sect. If she could defeat Xiao Feiyu and the other disciples, she was confident that she could defeat any disciple in the Limitless Palace team who challenged her. Although everyone had some opinions about Bailey Hongzhuang, they still listened to the Palace Master's words. So, they didn't know what to do at that moment. Since that's the case, young Palace Master, let me challenge you. In the next moment, a woman slowly stepped forward from the team and came in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Yan Aoshuang. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly recognized this woman. Yesterday, she didn't come to meet the cultivators in the team. However, Mistress introduced them to her and understood the characteristics of each of her teammates. Yan Aoshuang was ranked second in the team. She was cold and arrogant. Although she was a woman, her strength was not to be underestimated. Normally, Yan Aoshuang's reputation in the sect was very high. When the other disciples saw Yan Aoshuang stand up, their eyes also lit up. With Yan Aoshuang's strength, if Bailey Hongzhuang could defeat her, it would prove Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. Please. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She extended her hand and made a please gesture. It was obvious that she was calm and composed about this challenge. When Pei Yifan saw Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent look, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Back then, Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't very strong. Now that she was facing Yan Aoshuang's challenge, there was a high chance that she would fail. At the very least, with his strength, it was impossible for him to deal with Yan Aoshuang. He had a good impression of Bailey Hongzhuang and didn't want Bailey Hongzhuang to fail like this. However, this question was raised by Bailey Hongzhuang herself, so there was really no way around it. However, what happened next exceeded everyone's expectations. This was because the moment Bailey Hongzhuang revealed her cultivation, all the disciples' expressions changed. First rank of the Blue Realm. It was shocking that Bailey Hongzhuang had reached level 1 of the Blue Realm at such a young age. Pei Yifan's eyes widened as he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in disbelief. He was only at the 5th stage of the Blue Realm, and this was achieved with the help of the sect. Originally, he was very satisfied with his cultivation speed. Being able to reach such a cultivation at such a young age meant that his future was limitless. However, compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, his cultivation speed was simply too slow. Pei Yifan simply couldn't understand. How did Bailey Hongzhuang cultivate? In just 1 year, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation had increased so much. It was too shocking. The dissatisfaction in the hearts of the other disciples gradually dissipated after they sensed the cultivation level of Yi Shiwen. Chapter 23:17. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang defeated Yin Aoshuang. Her speed had exceeded everyone's expectations. After just one exchange, everyone understood that not only was Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation high enough, even her battle prowess matched her strength. At the very least, they could not defeat Bailey Hongzhuang. The young palace lord is indeed the young palace lord. Her strength and talent are truly shocking. There will always be someone better than you. Every force will have some abnormal people. We have one in our palace too. No matter what, we can rest assured that the young palace lord has such strength. Although the disciples were deeply moved, most of them felt happy. The young palace lord's strength was so strong. She would definitely be able to lead them to achieve good results in the battle for divine throne. Young palace lord, I'm convinced. Yin Aoshuang clasped her hands and bowed respectfully to Bailey Hongzhuang. As a woman, she had the greatest opinion of the young Bailey Hongzhuang. However, from the moment Bailey Hongzhuang defeated her, she was already convinced. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, and her gaze fell on the other disciples. Is there anyone else who wants a challenge? At this moment, no one had any objections. They immediately bowed and said, "We will listen to the young palace lord's arrangements." Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes sized up the 9 disciples in front of her. After seeing that the doubts in everyone's eyes had disappeared, she finally showed a satisfied expression. In fact, she was also astonished by her own cultivation speed. If her master had not allowed her to cultivate on the stairway to heaven, she would not have been able to reach this step. She did not know what Lan Qingyin's cultivation level was, but she believed that she had the ability to contend with her. Since no one has any objections, let's set off. A light and moving smile appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's elegant and refined face. Compared to her previous seriousness, her current attitude was undoubtedly much more amiable. Any cultivator who could reach this stage had a mature sense of right and wrong. As long as they knew that she had the strength to lead the team, there was no need to worry about others having other thoughts. After all, from the moment they entered the Battle of Zhuolu, they were already a team. They were bound together for good or ill. If anything went wrong, none of them would benefit. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and Bai Shi could not help but give Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up when they saw how easily she had resolved the matter. In just a few months, Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude had changed again. She had become more direct and efficient, or perhaps simple and crude. The attitude of a person in a superior position had completely erupted. In her previous life, Bailey Hongzhuang had such a style of doing things. Now that she was the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, she had to act like a young palace mistress. At the very least, in this team, she would not allow anyone to question her. The group of people from Limitless Palace slowly walked forward. The surroundings were quiet, but everyone was still paying attention to their surroundings. The Battle of Zhuolu was not only a battle between cultivators. The demonic beasts here were also very strong. In addition, there were some traps or treasures here from time to time, so everyone was carefully looking around. Chapter 23:18. The treasures in the Battle of Zhuolu were not only treasures of heaven and earth, but also opportunities to increase one's strength. However, everyone had only heard about it from others. As for whether this information was accurate or not, no one was sure. Every sect did not say much about the treasures and opportunities in the Battle of Zhuolu. It was up to the cultivators to discover them for themselves. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to move forward. The journey was very safe, and they did not encounter anything out of the ordinary. They could not help but feel puzzled. Didn't they say that the Battle of Zhuolu is full of opportunities? Why haven't we discovered anything after walking for so long? Not even a single demon beast? Pei Yifan's eyes flashed with curiosity. He had been worried that they would encounter some kind of danger. But now, he felt that he had been worried for nothing. We've only walked for half a day. The place we're at is too far away. It's not strange that we haven't encountered anything. Yin Aoshuang's expression was calm, but her eyes were still looking around vigilantly. No one knew when danger would approach. This kind of teleportation was random. It was not impossible for two groups of forces to be teleported to the same place. Everyone calm down. What's supposed to appear will appear. It's best to be careful. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, everyone stopped complaining. Bailey Hongzhuang's influence in the group was still very strong. Night slowly fell, and the entire world fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others sat on the ground with their backs against the trees. Yang Han was about to light a bonfire when Yin Aoshuang stopped him. It's better not to light a bonfire. If there are other groups not far from us, they will discover our presence when they see the bonfire. The disciples of every force were very strong. However, there were still differences between the strong and the weak among these forces. If the other party was not an extremely strong group, they could take advantage of this opportunity to snatch their identity badges. But if they were unlucky and met an extremely strong group, it would be a fierce battle. Today was only the first day of the battle for the deer. If his identity card was stolen just like that, it would be too embarrassing. Hearing Yin Aoshuang's words, Yang Han couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Only then did Bailey Hongzhuang express her stance. The weather is very cool, but it's not that cold. Let your contracted beast stand guard at the side. Even if we don't light a bonfire, there shouldn't be any problems. In the entire Limitless Palace team, more than half of the cultivators had their own contracted beasts. In fact, cultivators who had reached this level of cultivation would definitely think of a way to contract a demonic beast as long as they had the chance, because this could indirectly increase their strength. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other cultivators formed a small circle to rest together, while the contract beasts surrounded Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, responsible for guarding the night. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that no one had any intention of resting. Instead, they had all entered into a state of cultivation. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang sighed inwardly. Every genius cultivator must have put in an astonishing amount of effort. Otherwise, it would be impossible for them to reach this stage just by relying on their talent. As the night grew darker, everyone was already in a relaxed state. But at this moment, Baisher's voice suddenly rang in Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. Chapter 23:19. Upon hearing Baisher's words, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately exited her cultivation state and surveyed her surroundings. Rustle, rustle, rustle. A soft sound entered Bailey Hongzhuang's ears. It was like the soft sound of a poisonous snake crawling on the ground. However, the number of these sounds was rather shocking. Is it a demonic beast? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. If a cultivator had launched a sneak attack, such a sound would not have been produced. The only possibility was that a group of demonic beasts was approaching. Baisher shook his head. I don't sense any demonic beast's aura. However, something doesn't feel right. Bailey Hongzhuang's suspicions deepened. If it wasn't a demonic beast, then the situation was far too strange. Everyone, be careful. There seems to be some unknown objects around us. Bailey Hongzhuang did not delay any further and immediately called out to everyone. At the moment, they did not have a full understanding of the Battle of Zhuolu. They had to be extra careful. Everyone exited their cultivation state and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. Young Palace Lord, what's going on? Listen. Bailey Hongzhuang gestured for everyone to keep quiet, indicating for everyone to listen carefully to the surrounding sounds. Rustle, rustle, rustle. The soft sound gradually drew closer. Only then did everyone hear it. Their contracted beasts also began to react. Upon seeing this, everyone's eyes could not help but fall upon Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher. Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher's hearing was much more sensitive than theirs. Previously, they had not heard any commotion. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher had already heard it. This showed the difference in their abilities. Bailey Hongzhuang and Baisher clearly did not notice this. They had been in the desert world for too long and had been resting in the desert at night. Furthermore, the demonic beasts in the desert world were very good at launching sneak attacks from the sand. Hence, over time, their hearing had improved significantly. As long as there was even the slightest movement, they would immediately discover it. Everyone frowned when they heard the sound. What's that sound? It doesn't sound like a human or a demonic beast. It sounds like a lot of people are here. Are we in trouble? For a moment, everyone picked up the weapons in their hands and looked around vigilantly. In just 2 minutes, everyone could see what was in front of them. However, when everyone saw this scene, they couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh my God, what the hell is this?" Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the thing that suddenly appeared in front of her, and her clear eyes were filled with deep shock. This was a large patch of tree vines. Strangely, these tree vines were not green, but black. In this dark night, it was hard to tell. The most important thing was that the tree vines were like living creatures, attacking Bailey Hongzhuang and the others at full speed. "Everyone, be careful!" Bailey Hongzhuang's figure flashed and lit the torch in her hand. In this dark night, no one could see the specific situation clearly, so it was very difficult to fight. At the same time, the other cultivators lit their torches as well, illuminating their surroundings. With one look, everyone was horrified to realize that they had been surrounded by tree vines. Their surroundings were densely packed with tree vines, covering the sky and the sun. What the hell is this? How could it be so terrifying? Chapter 23:20. Without waiting for the crowd to find out what these tree vines were, the tree vines' attack was already flying towards them. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her torch, and the tree vines immediately retreated. These tree vines are afraid of fire. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, the cultivators who were originally prepared to throw down their torches and fight all held their torches firmly. After probing for a while, they found that the tree vines were indeed a little afraid of fire. However, although the tree vines had retreated slightly, they did not seem to have any intention of leaving. They only hesitated, looking for an opportunity to attack again. The cultivators held their torches, but the tree vines were everywhere. If they held their torches by their side, the tree vines would attack them from behind. In this darkness, it was impossible to guard against them. Vigorous elemental energy exploded from the crowd's bodies. Although the tree vines were extremely terrifying, the crowd's mental fortitude was not weak. Instantly, the sound of battle erupted from the crowd. Bailey Hongzhuang handed the torch to Xiao He and quickly attacked the tree vines with the colored glaze sword. The tree vines were closing in from all directions. If they were surrounded by the tree vines, it would undoubtedly form a cage of tree vines, trapping them within. If they were to fall into that situation, they would most likely lose their lives. Using her powerful elemental energy and fulgurating shadows, Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were extremely swift. She realized that the tree vines were like the tentacles of an octopus and were extremely agile. Not only that, these tree vines were also extremely sturdy. If it were not for the colored glaze sword's extreme sharpness, it would not have been an easy task to cut these tree vines in half. These tree vines can actually bleed. Could it be that they have turned into spirits? Yang Han stared in shock at the blood left behind by the tree vines that had been cut off. He had never heard of such a situation before. There was an indescribable strangeness to it that sent chills down his spine. Hearing Yang Han's words, the crowd then noticed the wound on the tree vines. They did not know when it had started, but the ground had been stained with blood. Under the illumination of the fire, it was a ghastly sight. In an instant, the crowd felt their hairs stand on end. The fact that these tree vines could move was already very strange. However, this tree vine's bleeding was too terrifying. However, at this moment, a cry of alarm suddenly rang out. "Everyone, save me. I've been entangled by these vines." Everyone turned around and saw that Li Yongbing had been entangled by the tree vines. The speed of the vines was extremely fast. After wrapping around Li Yongbing's legs, they dragged him all the way. Before Li Yongbing could cut off the vines, countless vines quickly wrapped around Li Yongbing, turning him into a cocoon. "This tree vine is sucking my blood." "Ah!" Li Yongbing's face was deathly pale. He was the weakest person in the team. Who would have thought that he would be entangled by the vines just because of a moment of carelessness? If this continued, he would lose his life in less than 2 minutes. Everyone noticed at a glance that a bulge had appeared on the vine that was wrapped around Li Yongbing's body. It was sucking Li Yongbing's blood like a straw. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines when they saw this scene. This sort of thing was truly disgusting. Everyone rushed to Li Yongbing's side and cut off all the vines. Fresh blood flowed out from the wound, but it was not the blood of the tree vines, but Li Yongbing's blood. Chapter 23-21. No one said a word. The scene that they had witnessed with their own eyes had given them the answer. However, the number of tree vines was so shocking and there were so many bloodstains. How many cultivators had been killed here? At this moment, the group realized that the Battle of Zhuolu was much more dangerous than they had imagined. Not only did they have to pay attention to these issues when they were fighting against cultivators, they also had to be careful of these unknown plants. The slightest carelessness could cost them their lives. Li Yongbing quickly swallowed the pill, and her pale face began to look a little better. "Master, what the hell are these tree vines? I've never heard of them before." Xiao Bai's face darkened. These things were far too strange and had completely exceeded their understanding. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "I've never heard of them before as well. The situation 1,000 years ago is quite different from the situation 1,000 years later. Many demonic beasts and plants have changed so much that we have no way of telling. However, since the rest of us have never heard of them, that proves that these things are very rare." The group's physical strength continued to deplete. Under the harassment of these tree vines, they did not even have the time to form their hand seals and could only continue to kill. Unfortunately, there were so many tree vines and their recovery speed was very fast. If this were to continue, it would not be long before everyone died of exhaustion. "We can't go on like this." Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Under the sneak attack of these tree vines, many of the group's disciples had already been injured. Sucking blood was an extremely taxing act on a cultivator's body. Even if they had taken the blood-forming pill, they would not be able to replenish all their blood in a short period of time. "We'll form 2 circles. The 5 of us on the outer circle, and our contracted beasts will deal with the tree vines. We'll protect the 5 in the inner circle so that they won't be disturbed and can unleash their martial techniques. I'm afraid that these tree vines can only be heavily injured by unleashing a large area of effect martial technique." Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the group's eyes lit up. This was the only way now. If they were to rely on their continuous killing, who knows how long they would have to be busy for. Soon, the crowd formed 2 circles, with Bailey Hongzhuang in the outer circle. Although the attack power of the martial arts technique she displayed was very strong, if the cultivators on the outer perimeter were to face these tree vines, once the tree vines broke through, then all their efforts would be for naught. White Lion stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang, its sharp claws slicing through the vines one after another. Its speed was even faster than a cultivator using a sword. Li Yongbing was still standing outside. His injuries had recovered a little, but his face was still very pale. Not only Li Yongbing, but the other 2 cultivators were also injured. It wasn't that they weren't strong enough. It was just that they couldn't see the sneak attack of the vines clearly in the dark. If they were careless and were dragged away, it would be too late to save them. They could only wait for their teammates to rescue them. Bailey Hongzhuang understood in her heart that if the Tiangang sect team faced this tree vine, the probability of injury would be greatly reduced. This was because their training in the bloody ground abyss had made them accustomed to the feeling of being ambushed. As long as there was even the slightest movement, they would immediately react. Therefore, the possibility of being ambushed was greatly reduced. Chapter 23-22. As Yin Aoshuang and the other 4 began to form their hand seals, the Yuan Qi in the air began to churn. A powerful storm that was brewing was gradually taking shape. At this level, the destructive power of a martial skill unleashed by a single cultivator was already extremely shocking. When the 5 of them unleashed their skills together, the destructive power would definitely be a shocking storm. The tree vines seemed to have sensed the impending danger, and their attacks instantly became even more frenzied. Instantly, the intensity of the attacks that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other four had to endure greatly increased. Countless tree vines circled in front of them like the tentacles of an evil spirit, trying to take their lives. Suddenly, Li Yongbing was unable to dodge in time and was once again dragged away by the tree vines, revealing an empty space. The tree vines were clearly intelligent. It knew that Li Yongbing was the weakest person in the group, and it was undoubtedly the easiest way to create an opening through him. When the other disciples saw that Li Yongbing had been dragged away, their expressions instantly turned ugly. Under such circumstances, they simply could not split themselves to save Li Yongbing. Furthermore, such a large opening would directly affect the 5 cultivators inside. Once the martial skill unleashed this time failed, it would be even more difficult to try again later on. Save me. Save me. Li Yongbing was dragged into the darkness just like that. An indescribable fear surrounded him. Now, he no longer had any ability to resist. If his teammates did not come to save him, only death would await him. Everyone's expressions were extremely ugly. They really could not split themselves up in this situation. Xiao Hei, Xiao Bai, go. The moment they saw that Li Yongbing had been entangled by the tree vines, Bailey Hongzhuang had already ordered Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai. Previously, she had not allowed Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai to participate in the battle of the encirclement. This was so that they could immediately fill in the gaps if they encountered a situation like this. Li Yongbing was their teammate. Naturally, they could not give up on him. Yes, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai replied in unison. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai's figures quickly grew larger. Xiao Hei leaped and quickly filled in the gap between Li Yongbing and Xiao Bai immediately went to rescue Li Yongbing. The 2 beasts' sharp claws also left their bodies. As they brandished their claws, the tree vines snapped. The crowd stared in shock at the 2 beasts that had suddenly grown larger. They were so frightened that their hearts almost stopped. They thought that something else had appeared. However, after realizing that the 2 demonic beasts that had suddenly grown bigger were the 2 guys that had been sitting on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, they were already shocked to the point that they couldn't be more shocked. Originally, they didn't care about these 2 guys, but Pei Yifan had told them that Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contract beasts weren't simple. Everyone naturally believed that Bai Shi's abilities were not simple. However, these 2 contracted beasts were too small. They did not have the slightest bit of deterrence. It was unbelievable. No one had expected these 2 contracted beasts to have such heaven-defying abilities. Their figures had grown larger directly. They had never seen such contracted beasts in all their lives. They were really pretending to be pigs to eat tigers. Li Yongbing originally thought that he was going to lose his life just like that. Suddenly, he saw a pitch-black figure approaching, and the despair in his heart grew. He had already been drained of his blood. Now that another beast had appeared, he had no choice but to die. Chapter 23:23. Only when the black demonic beast brought Li Yongbing back to the team did Li Yongbing realize that it was Bailey Hongzhuang's contracted beast. It had gone there to save him. Li Yongbing was extremely grateful to Bailey Hongzhuang for saving his life. If Bailey Hongzhuang hadn't saved him, he would have been dead by now. At the same time, the 5 of them had finished forming their seals. As the 5 of them attacked in all directions, an earth-shattering explosion resounded through heaven and earth. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already covered their ears with their elemental energy. Hence, they weren't affected at all. Along with the display of the martial skill, the surrounding area was instantly illuminated by the light. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were able to clearly see the situation around them. The tree vines seemed to be extending from the inside of the forest. It could be seen that the roots of the tree vines were still within the forest. Just by looking at them, they were able to extend so many tree vines. As for how terrifying the tree itself was, everyone felt that it was hard to imagine. Following the sound of the explosion, the surrounding tree vines were directly blown apart and turned into nothingness. Following that, everyone noticed that the tree vines were quickly escaping into the forest. Young Palace Master, should we chase after them and take a look? Long Xianjing asked. Long Xianjing was the strongest person in Limitless Palace's team other than Bailey Hongzhuang. Normally, he was very respected in Limitless Palace. However, he didn't speak much and wasn't cold either. Bailey Hongzhuang originally wanted to chase after them to take a look. However, after seeing the injuries of the other cultivators, she decided to put the idea aside for the time being. Many of our teammates are injured. Currently, the most important thing is to heal their injuries. When the sun rises, we will go in and take a look. Not to mention the other cultivators who were injured, Li Yongbing's injuries were the most serious. If he didn't rest well, he might not be able to continue the operation tomorrow. Since they had come together to participate in the Battle of Zhuolu, they were a team. They definitely couldn't leave any of the cultivators behind. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's gaze fell on the injured cultivator, and they nodded. Although they couldn't see the situation of the tree vines, Bailey Hongzhuang's consideration of everyone still made everyone very happy. If the captain only focused on fighting and didn't care about the situation of the cultivators, then they would be even more disappointed. That tree vine has also suffered heavy injuries. I believe that it won't attack again tonight. After the battle, just now, everyone has lost a lot of energy. Rest at ease, and I will keep watch. Young Palace Master, let me keep watch. Long Xinjing said. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang was a woman, and her physical strength was not as good as a man's. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly and shook her head. I'm fine. The battle, just now, didn't consume much of my energy. Besides, I'm very sensitive to some sounds and was able to detect it immediately. Everyone don't decline. Seize the time and rest well. In this Battle of Zhuolu, we might encounter danger at any time. Everyone needs to be in their best condition for battle. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was gentle and dignified, not allowing anyone to refuse. Everyone thought for a while before circulating their cultivation techniques to recover. Chapter 23-24. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had predicted, there was no more danger in the latter half of the night. When the sky gradually brightened, everyone's heart finally relaxed. Although the battle with the tree vines was soul-stirring, everyone's injuries were mostly superficial. As for the matter of their blood being sucked, everyone could only use the blood-forming pill to recover. Fortunately, before participating in the Battle of Zhuolu, everyone had prepared a lot of pills in case of emergency. These pills were all prepared by Limitless Palace for them. When fighting for glory for the palace would never be stingy. They had prepared all the pills that they could possibly need. Under such circumstances, everyone's recovery speed was also very fast. Long Xianjing and the others withdrew from their cultivation state. After the battle last night, everyone's relationship had become much closer. After all, every cultivator who was entangled by the tree vines was rescued by their teammates. Therefore, many of the barriers and grudges had gradually disappeared under such circumstances. After the incident last night, everyone's opinion of Bailey Hongzhuang had changed again. Not to mention that they didn't discover anything before. Bailey Hongzhuang and her contracted beasts were able to discover danger at the first moment. This proved that Bailey Hongzhuang's vigilance was much stronger than theirs. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang's other two demonic beasts were also very shocking existences. Although they had now returned to their cute and petite appearance, no one dared to look down on these two contracted beasts. The battle strength that they had displayed yesterday was also very shocking. Now, everyone completely understood why Bailey Hongzhuang was able to become the Palace Master's young Palace Master. At least, the gap between them and Bailey Hongzhuang was not just a little bit. There was always someone better than you. This sentence was not wrong at all. Bailey Hongzhuang was not only talented, she was also very strong. Her brain was also very smart. Under such a chaotic situation last night, Bailey Hongzhuang was still able to command them calmly. There was no need to doubt her leadership. She was such an outstanding woman, yet her personality was not as arrogant and despotic as the other geniuses. At this moment, they were truly convinced. Everyone took some dry rations and started eating. Last night's consumption was huge, and today they were really hungry. After everyone finished eating, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone and said, "How is everyone's recovery?" "There's no problem," everyone said. Sure enough, the exhaustion on everyone's faces had completely dissipated, and they had recovered their spirited appearance. As a cultivator's strength increased, his body's recovery ability also increased. Ordinary injuries could be healed very quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Li Yongbing's body. She could see that Li Yongbing still looked a little weak. Last night, he had used up too much of his energy. Although the hematopoietic pill could increase the speed of his blood production, it could not restore all his blood in a short period of time. "Li Yongbing, how do you feel?" "Young Palace Master, don't worry. I can keep up with everyone. I'm fine." Li Yongbing felt a wave of guilt in his heart. Usually, he was also a very strong fighter. He did not expect that in the Battle of Zhuolu, he would drag everyone down. He was really embarrassed. Chapter 23-25. Hearing everyone's words of concern, Li Yongbing hurriedly waved his hand. "Everyone, don't worry. I'm fine now." Although his body was still weak, it did not affect his movements. "Li Yongbing, when we're moving, don't do anything. Rest well." Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful face was filled with a caring smile. She could also see Li Yongbing's current state. As long as he did not do anything later, it would not affect him much. "Thank you, young palace mistress." Li Yongbing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gratefully. He did not want to drag everyone down because of him. "Since that's the case, let's set off. Let's see what the vines that attacked us yesterday were." Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and looked in the direction where the vines had gone last night. There were still many bloodstains on the ground, so it was easy for them to track them down. Long Xianjing and the rest had a serious expression on their faces. Last night, they were caught off guard and were ambushed. If it wasn't for the fact that their vision was obstructed in the dark and the fact that the vines were blocking the moonlight, they wouldn't have been in such a sorry state. Today's weather was clear. They had to go and see what the vines from last night were. "I will definitely kill those evil things." After so many years, who knows how many people have been harmed by these vines? Yin Aoshuang's face was filled with anger. She had never been in such a sorry state since she had stepped on the path of cultivation. It was really infuriating. The things in this Battle of Zhuolu are really too strange. I have never heard of such things in this world. Pei Yifan frowned. He had thought that the Battle of Zhuolu did not mention anything about danger. He did not expect that they would see true danger on the first day of the Battle of Zhuolu. The strength of their team was extremely strong. If it had been any other team, facing the encirclement of the vines, they would have been completely annihilated. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest followed the bloodstains. Only then did they realize that the range of the vines was unexpectedly far. Originally, they were only at the outskirts of the forest. Now, they were following the bloodstains into the forest. The closer they got to the forest, the more their hearts sank. What kind of tree vines could extend to such a terrifying length? It was truly shocking. Finally, the group arrived at the nest of the tree vines. In their line of sight, a huge black tree appeared in everyone's line of sight. The size of this tree exceeded everyone's expectations. This was because the tree in front of them was so huge that it was comparable to a 3-story building. Countless vines twined around the tree. The winding and huge vines made everyone understand why the vines could extend so far last night. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the tree vines, she suddenly understood. "I understand why we didn't see any traces of demonic beasts along the way. I'm afraid it's because of the existence of these tree vines." Last night, they had already seen the combat power of the tree vines. It was really too terrifying. If a monster beast was targeted by the tree vines, it would have no chance to escape and would be sucked dry. Chapter 23-26. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's heart trembled. So this was the reason behind all of this. It seems like the blood that these tree vines have absorbed is not only from human cultivators, but also from demonic beasts. Long Xianjing looked at the terrifying tree vines in front of him. How many demonic beasts and cultivators' blood did it absorb to be able to develop to such a level? Everyone nodded their heads. The cultivators who had participated in the Battle of Zhuolu were all dragons and phoenixes among men. Even if they were ambushed by the tree vines, only a minority would lose their lives. However, the demonic beasts in this forest were in for a bad time. The Battle of Zhuolu is a small world created for cultivators like us. Normal dangers will not be able to pose much of an obstacle to us. So, the things here are probably not normal. We have to be more careful from now on. There are many things that cannot be seen through the eyes of the outside world. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly understood the crux of the matter. This Battle of Zhuolu was also a test for them. If there were only normal demonic beasts inside, it would mean that if she were to participate in the competition with her current strength, there would be no challenge at all. Instead, it would be like playing around. The various factions would obviously not let them have it so easy. It was likely that they were not the only ones who had encountered something like this. The other groups had also encountered something unusual. In reality, everything was just as Bailey Hongzhuang had predicted. Every group that had participated in the Battle of Zhuolu had encountered something unusual. After a huge battle, they were finally able to deal with it. Master, if this thing was created by the various factions to test us, could it be that the so-called treasure is related to this thing? Xiaohei's eyes suddenly lit up. This thing was really too unusual. Previously, she had already heard that there were various treasures and opportunities in the Battle of Zhuolu. Now that she thought about it, these treasures were definitely not placed on the ground for you to obtain. If it was really that simple, what was the difference between it and picking it up for free? When everyone heard Xiaohei's words, their eyes instantly lit up. Looks like we have to think of a way to deal with this strange tree. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a playful smile. Originally, they did not have the determination to kill this tree vine. This was because the tree vine did not look easy to deal with. Continuing to fight with it would only be a waste of energy. If there was a possibility that there was a treasure inside, then everything would be different. Suddenly, everyone looked at the big tree with a sharp gaze. No matter what, they had to get rid of this tree today. Only after taking care of the tree would they know if their guess was correct or not. If he was right, then the more difficult it was to deal with, the more precious the treasure behind it would be. Let's work together to kill these giant trees. What do you all think? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at everyone. Although she was the leader of the team, she still needed to seek everyone's opinion on such matters. Young Palace Master, we agree. Everyone expressed their stance. Last night, they had been tortured by this giant tree for half a day. Today, they had a reason to kill it. Naturally, they would not refuse. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and looked at Li Yongbing. Li Yongbing, you haven't fully recovered yet. Do what you can. Chapter 23-27. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were still some distance away from the giant tree. Hence, the giant tree had not taken the initiative to attack Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Once the group had made their decision, they immediately walked towards the giant tree. As the group approached, the vines on the giant tree began to twist and turn rapidly. Upon closer inspection, the group could see that there were wounds on the vines. It was obvious that they had been inflicted by their attacks last night. Without waiting for the group to take the initiative to attack, the giant tree acted as if it had seen its enemy the moment it saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. The vines that filled the sky immediately attacked them. Everyone be careful. The vine's nest is here. I'm afraid that their power will be even more frightening. Bailey Hongzhuang left them with a warning and began the battle. They wanted to completely destroy the giant tree. The other cultivators reacted quickly as well. Normally, they were all capable of holding their own. Although the giant tree in front of them was strange in every way, destroying it was still very simple. It was simple and crude. They just had to directly blow it up. Surging yuan qi whizzed out from the group's body. After last night's experience, everyone had a certain level of tacit understanding. A portion of the cultivators were responsible for dealing with the vines, while the others directly used large-scale destructive martial arts techniques. All they had to do was to directly blow the giant tree to pieces. After Bailey Hongzhuang had exchanged blows with the vines, she realized that the vine's power was much stronger than last night. It was obvious that the closer the distance, the stronger the combat power of the vines. The giant tree naturally knew what Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were thinking. The vines extended outwards and swept wildly towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest, intending to bind Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest so that they could not move. As all the vines came down from the giant tree, the group was shocked to find that there was a human face on the giant tree's trunk. Seeing this, everyone could not help but stare blankly. Oh my God, what the hell is this thing? This tree has really become a spirit. Does it matter if we kill it? What's there to be afraid of? This fellow has lived for so many years. It's not strange for it to become like this. Who knows, the treasure behind it might be extremely powerful. As cultivators, most of them were fearless people. Originally, cultivation was to defy the heavens and change one's fate. A cultivator's lifespan would continuously increase along with their cultivation. Hence, there were many things that everyone did not care about. Boom, boom, boom. One attack after another rapidly formed in the group's hands. Without hesitation, they attacked the giant tree. However, the next scene caused everyone to be shocked once again. A terrifying black light spread out from the giant tree, as if it was a barrier blocking everyone's attacks. Very quickly, everyone realized that their attacks, although the tree, did not cause the tree's attack. It was much weaker than what they had expected. How can this be? She did not expect that this would be a fierce of the tree Hongzhuang, who knew that the trees to the tree to the trees, to stuzes. To the Baon was, in fact, it the tree to uses to the tree. It's this of the trees to the tree, this giant tree, of this to be to survive. In the past, there must have been other groups of cultivators who encountered this giant tree, but they were unable to deal with it. This situation is very normal, so everyone should be mentally prepared. Chapter 23-28. Since this was a huge problem that no one had been able to solve for so many years, if there was a treasure here, it would definitely be extremely precious. Riches and honor were found in the midst of danger. This was a popular saying in the cultivation world. If one wanted to obtain a treasure, it was impossible to not put in a lot of effort. Martial techniques were continuously used, and the vines of the giant tree danced even more fiercely. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others seemed to have been trapped in a cage made of vines. The vines were everywhere, attacking Bailey Hongzhuang and the others with all their might. It was obvious that the actions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had truly angered the vines. The contracted beasts also began to protect their masters, blocking the attacks of the vines so that their masters could have more time to use their martial techniques. Because the number of vines was simply too terrifying, when Xiao He and Xiao Bai saw this scene, their figures instantly enlarged several times in front of everyone's shocked eyes, turning into two demonic beasts the size of the giant tree. Even though the two fur balls, one black and one white, were enlarged several times, they still had an indescribable naivety. However, from the spiritual energy in their eyes and their nimble movements, everyone could tell that these two fur balls were extremely powerful. When Long Xianjing and the others saw the fur balls that had suddenly enlarged to such an extent, their faces all revealed looks of disbelief. What the hell? What kind of contracted beasts are these? They can actually change their size like that? Last night, when Xiao He and Xiao Bai turned into human size, it was already shocking enough. Who would have thought that Xiao He and Xiao Bai were not at their limit? They could actually enlarge to such an extent. This was simply too shocking. I've never heard of contracted beasts like this before. This time, I've really learned something new. Young Palace Mistress contracted beasts are truly mystical. I can't even recognize a single one of these three contracted beasts. Ever since they saw the powerful abilities of Bailey Hongzhuang's three contracted beasts, everyone was filled with curiosity towards these three contracted beasts. However, after a long private discussion, they still could not come to a conclusion. This made everyone feel somewhat defeated. It was normal that they couldn't compare to the young palace master, but they couldn't even tell what kind of monster beast the young palace master had contracted was. This was too much a blow to them. At this moment, everyone looked at the gigantic figures of Xiao He and Xiao Bai, and then looked at the similarly gigantic tree opposite them. They suddenly realized that there were still many things in this world that they did not know. As Xiao He and Xiao Bai enlarged their bodies, many vines were attracted to them. As a result, the number of vines attacking Bailey Hongzhuang and the others decreased significantly. Everyone was overjoyed when they saw Xiao He and Xiao by attracting so many tree vines. In an instant, everyone's attacks became even more violent. The vines were blown apart one by one, and blood immediately gushed out. The smell of blood in the air grew stronger. The tree vines seemed to have sensed Xiao He and Xiao Bai's influence in this battle. They immediately focused all their attacks on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Only by getting rid of Xiao He and Xiao Bai would the giant tree have a chance of defeating Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. As all the tree vines swarmed towards them, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were quickly entangled by the tree vines. Chapter 23-29. The vines quickly tightened, intending to use this method to kill Xiao He and Xiao Bai. When the crowd saw this, they immediately went to rescue Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Everyone knew that once they were bound by the vines, they would be killed instantly. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang out. Everyone, use this opportunity to attack the giant tree with all your might. At this moment, all of the giant tree's vines were attacking Xiao He and Xiao Bai, so it was unable to restrain them. They could use this opportunity to attack the giant tree furiously. If they missed this opportunity, it would be even more difficult to deal with the giant tree later on. When they heard this, although everyone wanted to save Xiao He and Xiao Bai, they knew that Bailey Hongzhuang must have her reasons for saying this. Instantly, everyone turned their attention to the giant tree. Now that the giant tree's defense was the weakest, they might be able to use this opportunity to break through the giant tree's defense. While the other cultivators were attacking the giant tree, Bailey Hongzhuang gave Baishur a look. Baishur immediately understood and immediately appeared beside Xiao He and Xiao Bai. The giant tree was obviously not as smart as the humans. It did not remember that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had the ability to change their size. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also knew that what they needed to do now was to attract the vine's combat power. Hence, even though they were bound by the vines like dumplings, they were not in a hurry to escape. After all, they could quickly shrink when the vines were trying to kill them. Boom! Boom! Ripples appeared on the black barrier, blocking all the attacks. However, during the process of the attacks, everyone realized that the black barrier was not invincible. As their attacks became more and more intense, the ripples on the black barrier became deeper and deeper. Faintly, a crack appeared. Seeing this, the crowd was delighted. As long as the giant tree's defense could be broken, there was hope for them. Everyone, do your best. We need to destroy this tree's defense as soon as possible. Long Xianjing shouted. The other cultivators naturally noticed this as well. They were overjoyed, and their attacks became even fiercer. Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly shrunk after they could no longer withstand the vines. White Lion had been paying attention to Xiao He and Xiao Bai's movements. When it saw Xiao He and Xiao Bai shrink, it quickly attacked the vines from the outside. She waved her sharp claws rapidly and dug out a hole in a short period of time. Xiao He and Xiao Bai immediately jumped out. After jumping out, Xiao He and Xiao Bai enlarged their bodies again and attacked the tree vines. Right now, they were only playing the role of harassing the tree vines. As long as the tree vines could not affect the crowd too much, it would be enough. When the giant tree saw that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had escaped from the vine cage, it was furious. It had failed to kill the two of them. If it tried again, its defense would not be able to last for long. Thinking of this, the giant tree could not be bothered with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. It immediately attacked the other cultivators. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had already seen through the giant tree's thoughts. They would not let it leave so easily. They stretched out their hands and tightly bound the tree vines. Chapter 23-30. Bailey Hongzhuang unleashed her martial arts techniques to attack the black barrier. As they unleashed their attacks, Bailey Hongzhuang became more and more astonished. The cultivators in their team were all very powerful, but under their continuous attacks, only a few cracks appeared on the black barrier. Just from this point alone, one could see how powerful the tree vines were. It was no wonder that the tree vines had existed here for so many years without anyone being able to get rid of them. Its defensive power was just too terrifying. If not for Xiao He and Xiao by restraining it, it would have been extremely difficult for them to kill the giant tree. Perhaps the annihilation of some of the teams in the past had something to do with the giant tree. The giant tree's defensive power is just too shocking. Yin Aoshuang was shocked when she saw that the giant tree was still unscathed even after they had unleashed so many attacks and the surroundings had been razed to the ground. This level of defensive power was simply comparable to the sect protecting formation of a small sect. Yes, its defensive power is simply incredible. It's like an overlord in this forest. Even a blue realm demon beast would probably die in its hands. The abilities displayed by the giant tree had completely exceeded the scope of everyone's imagination. It was basically a tree demon and could not be judged by common sense. Just as everyone was sighing in amazement, countless tree vines suddenly attacked them. When they saw this, everyone could not help but look at Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Previously, they had only been able to focus on attacking the tree vines because Xiao He and Xiao Bai were restraining it. They did not expect the tree vines to entangle them again. When they saw this, everyone realized that the tree vines had avoided Xiao He and Xiao Bai after they had failed to attack Xiao He and Xiao Bai. No matter where Xiao He and Xiao Bai appeared, the tree vines would quickly retract and avoid any entanglement with Xiao He and Xiao Bai. The reaction speed of the tree vines was extremely fast, and Xiao He and Xiao Bai's efforts were in vain as they deliberately avoided the tree vines. For a time, everyone once again fell into the entanglement of the tree vines, complaining incessantly. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but frown. This can't go on. Damn it. This giant tree is getting smarter and smarter. We are bound by these vines and can't use any martial skills. Pei Yifan couldn't help but curse out loud. These vines were like annoying flies, causing him to be unable to move at all. The other cultivators were also restrained by the tree vines and were unable to use their martial arts techniques. Then, the crowd realized that the giant tree had a smug smile on its face. It was obviously mocking Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Master, this can't go on. White Lion's eyes were gloomy. Their battle not only consumed their essence energy, it also consumed their physical strength. However, the power of the giant tree seemed to be inexhaustible. No matter how they bombarded it, the giant tree was not affected at all. If this continued, they would be the ones at a disadvantage. White Lion, Xiao He Xiao Bai, protect me from the side. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly retreated. When she was a certain distance away from the tree vines, she sat down on the ground. A simple yet exquisite zither appeared in Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang take out the nine-tailed zither, the three beasts were stunned. Then they smiled excitedly. Chapter 23:31. Killing with sound was a skill that Bailey Hongzhuang had learned in the past. However, she did not use it often. Killing with sound was a group attack skill with a wide area of effect. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang usually attacked directly. However, in this situation, with so many tree vines, it was a good idea to use this skill. Clang! A crisp sound poured out from the nine-tailed zither, and Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly hooked up into a smile. The sound quality of a nine-tailed zither was excellent, and the effect was also excellent. When the crowd saw Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly sitting at the back and playing the zither, they were confused. They did not understand why Bailey Hongzhuang was playing the zither at this moment. The sound of the zither continued to flow from Bailey Hongzhuang's fingers. A song of high mountains and flowing water was vividly interpreted by her. The crowd was intoxicated by the beautiful sound of the zither. They did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang was not only strong, but also good at the zither. However, now was not the time to show off her zither skills. What is young palace master doing? Pei Yifan was confused. As a cultivator, he had little contact with the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Now that the tree demon was so powerful, even if they joined forces, it would not be easy to deal with it. However, the young palace master was playing the zither for no reason. It was too strange. Long Xianjing and Yin Aoshuang were also looking at Bailey Hongzhuang. A possibility appeared in their hearts. Long Xianjing and Yin Aoshuang could not help but look at each other. Although they had not known the young palace master for long, they were sure that the young palace master was not someone who would do useless things. Aoshuang, I have heard of a group attack skill that uses the sound of the zither as a carrier. However, there are very few people who know this skill. Yin Aoshuang nodded. If we are not wrong, the young palace master is the one who has mastered this skill. Just as everyone was feeling puzzled, Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music became increasingly sharp. Essence energy was poured into the zither music, and it was as if it had materialized and attacked the tree vines. Some of the cultivators still hadn't figured out what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing when they saw the vines that had surrounded them and annoyed them to no end suddenly snap apart with a loud sound. It was as if there was an invisible sharp weapon that directly cut off the tree vines. Hundreds of vines broke apart with a loud bang. The cut was extremely smooth, and everyone regained their freedom in an instant. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of horror. Previously, they had fought with the tree vines for a long time and only managed to cut off 100 of them. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang had directly cut off the tree demon's claws and fangs with just a zither note. This was too shocking. As expected of a young palace master, this strength is really amazing. This time, I really admire the young palace master. This strength is really too heaven-defying. Everyone cannot help but sigh. Originally, when they knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had reached the first level of the Blue Realm, they were already very impressed by Bailey Hongzhuang. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang's combat power had completely exceeded the normal first level of the Blue Realm. With the terrifying combat power of the 3 contracted beasts and the endless stream of trump cards, even if they joined forces, they might not be Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. Chapter 2332. The tree demon had been running amok in this forest for so many years. No matter if it was a demonic beast or a cultivator, none of them had been able to injure it to this extent. However, it still did not know what had happened that caused so many of its vines to be cut off. One had to know that it had sucked the blood of countless demonic beasts in order to cultivate so many vines. Who would have thought that all of its efforts would be for naught? Bailey Hongzhuang played the high mountain flowing water. Ever since she had learned this zither technique, her master had taught her that no matter what kind of song it was, it would contain a powerful and domineering attack. A fierce song would naturally be filled with killing intent. However, a gentle song would make it easy for people to let down their guard. Occasionally, a killing move would be able to achieve unexpected results. If she had played the fierce song from the start, the tree demon would have already turned its attention to her. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had helped them to solve such a huge obstacle, their hearts were filled with joy. Leave these vines to me. You guys continue to deal with the black barrier. Bailey Hongzhuang's cold and sweet voice slowly rang out. Long Xianjing looked at the 3 beasts beside Bailey Hongzhuang and knew that these 3 beasts would definitely be able to protect Bailey Hongzhuang. Immediately, everyone's attention turned back to the black barrier. Only by breaking this black barrier would they have a chance to kill the tree demon. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang had already attracted all of the tree demon's aggro. Hence, the tree demon did not care about Long Xianjing and the rest. It only wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. This hateful woman and her beasts had ruined its many years of hard work. Seeing that the tree demon had turned all of its attention to her, Bailey Hongzhuang was not worried at all. Instead, she was happy. This was the result that she wanted to see. The zither music continued, crisp and pleasant to the ears. Elemental energy flowed along the zither music, and the attacks of the vines were all blocked by Bailey Hongzhuang. The three beasts stood guard beside Bailey Hongzhuang in case of an emergency. However, based on the strength that Bailey Hongzhuang had displayed, there was no need for them to make a move. That was because Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music was enough to stop an army of thousands of men and horses. Pung pung pung. The vines exploded one after another, turning into a bloody mist in midair. The smell of blood became thicker and thicker. Bailey Hongzhuang was not stained by a single speck of blood. The two formed a stark contrast. As the sound of Bailey Hongzhuang's zither became more and more agitated, the effect of the attack also became more and more astonishing. In a short time, the tree demon had already suffered a big loss in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang. It did not dare to attack Bailey Hongzhuang anymore, because Bailey Hongzhuang's zither music had formed a terrifying barrier of killing intent. As long as it got close to Bailey Hongzhuang, all of the vines would turn into nothingness. The tree demon had also realized that whether it was Bailey Hongzhuang or her three beasts, they were not easy to deal with. Compared to them, the other cultivators were the key to breaking through. The tree demon no longer attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Bailey Hongzhuang would not let the tree demon go. This tree demon had already caused them a lot of trouble. Speaking of which, it had only itself to blame for falling into this situation. If it was not for the tree demon's sneak attack last night, they would not have even noticed the existence of the tree demon. Chapter 23:33. Under the attacks of Long Xianjing and the others, the cracks on the black barrier were getting bigger and bigger. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before the black barrier was completely destroyed. When everyone felt the zither music attacking the black barrier, they finally came back to their senses. When they saw what was happening, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. The dense vines that were originally wrapped around the tree demon's body had unknowingly turned into nothingness. Everyone could only see countless cuts and blood dripping out. The tree demon was no longer as complacent as before. On the contrary, its humanoid face was extremely ugly, and its arrogant aura had completely dissipated. The tree demon looked at everyone with fear. It had never suffered such a serious injury before, and almost all of its skills were gone. Once this black barrier was broken, then his life would be in danger. When everyone saw the change in the tree demon's expression, a smile gradually appeared on their faces. Victory was in sight. The tree demon had existed in this forest for so many years and had never been defeated. Now that they could defeat it, it was something to be happy about. Kacha! A crisp cracking sound was heard. The black barrier finally couldn't take the pressure and dissipated under everyone's attacks. In the next moment, everyone's attacks landed on the tree demon's body. The tree demon's defense was this powerful black barrier. Now that the black barrier was gone, it naturally had no power to resist everyone's attacks. Bang! Everyone only heard a loud explosion, and the tree demon was turned into a cloud of blood mist by the attack, spraying all over the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but exclaim. They were extremely happy. This tree demon is really powerful. It took us so long to defeat it. Young Palace Master, you're really amazing. Your zither skills are amazing. Pei Yifan gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. Now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang didn't use her true strength when she fought against Chewing Fei. If Bailey Hongzhuang was serious, Chewing Fei wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Everyone has worked hard. Everyone wiped the sweat off their foreheads. The tree demon's combat strength had reached the blue realm. It wasn't easy to defeat it. Bailey Hongzhuang put away the nine-tailed zither and slowly walked towards the tree demon's original position. They spent so much effort to defeat the tree demon. They didn't know if there were any treasures behind the tree demon. Long Xianjing and the others also walked beside Bailey Hongzhuang. They spent so much effort to defeat the tree demon because they wanted to know if there were any treasures behind the tree demon. If there weren't any treasures, then their efforts would have been in vain. However, after the tree demon turned into a bloody mist, the situation in front of him became clear. There was no treasure at all. Seeing this scene, everyone's faces couldn't help but reveal choose. After spending so much effort, I actually didn't get anything. What a waste of effort. I didn't expect it to be just a tree demon. Could it be that it wasn't deliberately left behind by the major factions? Chapter 23:34. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the blood on the ground in front of her and frowned slightly. According to her experience as the head of an aristocratic family in her previous life, there must be a deeper meaning to this arrangement. There should be something behind it. Could it be that the tests in the Battle of Zhuolu were all so difficult? If so, then the various factions must have put in a lot of effort to let the cultivators gain experience. This was illogical. Bailey Hongzhuang only thought that this was illogical. If even dealing with this kind of tree demon was nothing, then it would be too difficult to obtain the treasures in the Battle of Zhuolu. Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang continued to walk forward until she reached the place where the tree demon had been. The ground was covered with sticky blood, and walking in gave people a very uncomfortable feeling. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was still stubbornly walking to the place where the tree demon had been, they couldn't help but feel helpless. It seemed that the young palace master found it even harder to believe this fact. However, the scene that happened next made everyone's eyes widen, because Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared in a thin air before everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, Li Yongbing couldn't help but rub his eyes, wondering if he had seen wrongly. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was indeed not in front of him. What's going on? Why did the young palace master disappear? Li Yongbing said in shock. Long Xianjing looked at the place where Bailey Hongzhuang had disappeared and frowned. There must be a problem here. Hearing Long Xuanjing's words, everyone looked at each other and then picked up their weapons and approached the place where Bailey Hongzhuang had gone. After Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the place where the tree demon had been, she found that she had walked into a world of ice and her body slid down uncontrollably. During this process, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that this was a passage made of ice. It was smooth and solid like a slide. That was why she was able to slide down from the top. The three beasts were also standing behind Bailey Hongzhuang. At first, they exclaimed in surprise, but when they saw the crystal-clear world of ice in front of them, their eyes lit up. The slide was very long. Bailey Hongzhuang slid all the way to the bottom before standing up. The three beasts followed closely behind. However, the three of them liked to fight with each other, so when the three of them crashed together, they immediately felt dizzy. Xiaohei scratched her head in dissatisfaction and jumped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder. "Master, what is this place? It looked really magical." Xiaohei's eyes were filled with curiosity. She didn't expect that there would be such a magical place where the tree demon had been. It was really amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everything in front of her and saw that the surrounding mountains were all made of ice. They were like ice sculptures, beautiful and spectacular. The cold air continued to enter her body. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but take out a winter coat from her Chinquan bag and put it on. "The ice here is not simple," Bailey Hongzhuang muttered to herself. Logically speaking, with her current strength, she should be able to withstand the cold. However, facing this ice, her elemental energy was unable to stop the cold air from corroding her body. It could be seen how powerful it was. Just when Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking, a few more exclamations came from the slide above. Chapter 23:35. With a series of exclamations, Long Xianjing and the others appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang. When everyone saw what was in front of them, they were completely dumbfounded. The size of this place was completely beyond their expectations. Heavens, what is this place? Yin Aoshuang's face was filled with disbelief. Who would have thought that there was such a world behind the tree demon? Long Xianjing and the others also looked around in surprise. If not for Bailey Hongzhuang taking the initiative to come here, they would have missed this place. Fortunately, young palace master found this place. Otherwise, we would have fought for nothing. Li Yongbing couldn't help but sigh. If not for Bailey Hongzhuang wanting to go over to take a look, they would not have thought that this place was connected to such a world. Obviously, this was a small world created by the various large factions. It was impossible for such a big place to not have any treasures. Everyone nodded. In fact, They were all prepared to leave. Speaking of which, the young palace master's reaction was much sharper than theirs. There should be treasures here. Everyone, let's look around. Long Xianjing looked around. There were all kinds of treasures in the Battle of Zhuolu. There was no need to think to know that there must be treasures in this place. Following Long Xuanjing's words, everyone started to look around. The reason why everyone was so desperate to obtain a spot in the Battle of Zhuolu was because they wanted to become famous under the heavens. On the other hand, they wanted to obtain more cultivation resources. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. Other than ice, there was only ice. She could see through at a glance. She really couldn't find anything special. Master, the treasure here can't be this ice, right? Baisher looked around and found that there was nothing here. He couldn't help but sigh. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. It shouldn't be. The ice here is so special, but there are so many of them. It shouldn't be a treasure. According to Bailey Hongzhuang's past experience, there might be other treasures in this ice. It was just that they hadn't found them yet. Little black, little white, little white, little white, look carefully. There might be something in the ice that looks the same as ice, but is not the same kind of thing. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the three beasts nodded their heads. Their master was much more experienced than them in this aspect. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with the light of wisdom as she carefully observed her surroundings. The tree demon had never been killed before, and no one had ever come to this world of ice before. Since that was the case, the treasures inside must still be there. For a time, the man and the three beasts worked hard to search. Bailey Hongzhuang's figure leapt up, using shifting form's shadow transposition, directly climbing up the ice mountain. As Bailey Hongzhuang stood at the highest point, she discovered that there was something moving at the highest point. Moving? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed. In this frozen state, there was something that could move. Even though its movements were extremely slow, she could still see a slight change. It should be this. Chapter 23:36. Master, you found something? The three beasties saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly stopped moving, and they all came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, wanting to know what Bailey Hongzhuang had found. When the three beasties saw what Bailey Hongzhuang had seen, their eyes widened. In their line of sight, a tiny flame was swaying in the ice, so tiny that it was almost invisible. There's actually a flame in the ice. Isn't that too unbelievable? Xiaohei looked at this scene in disbelief, but from the slight swaying, she could still confirm that it was a flame. This ice is so powerful, but this flame is still able to exist here. It seems that this flame is very powerful. Although Xiaohei had never seen this kind of transparent flame, but fire and ice were existences that countered each other. To be able to survive in this ice world, and to be such a small flame, it was definitely not simple. Bailey Hongzhuang carefully looked at this flame. If her guess was right, the quality of this flame was probably a few grades higher than ordinary flames. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was studying, Long Xianjing and the rest came to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, wanting to know what Bailey Hongzhuang had found. After everyone saw the flame clearly, everyone's mouth was wide open. This should be the ice-cold flame, right? Long Xianjing carefully looked at the small flame in front of him, and his expression was filled with surprise and disbelief. Ice-cold flame? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows raised slightly. There were some strange flames in this world, but this ice-cold flame, she had never heard of it. It was probably a flame that was born later on. Long Xianjing nodded, seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not know much about this ice-cold flame. He started to explain. The ice-cold flame is a special flame that was born between heaven and earth. Its temperature is ice-cold and is usually born in ice mountains, but the temperature it burns is extremely high and can burn everything. It is because these two completely special characteristics are concentrated in it, so the ice-cold flame is often called by people. However, the ice-cold flame survival in this world is extremely small. I did not expect it to appear here. Long Xianjing could not help but exclaim, this kind of treasure was completely out of their expectations. I did not expect the Battle of Zhuolu to be so generous. even having such a treasure. Yin Ao Shuang's usually calm face also revealed a look of surprise. This kind of treasure, many powers do not have. I wonder which power. This is too generous. If the successor of this force could absorb this icy cold fire, his strength would increase by another level. This icy cold fire had many wonderful uses. Unexpectedly, it was left behind in the Battle of Zhuolu. At this moment, Li Yangbing's surprised voice suddenly sounded. "Look, there is ices." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone looked towards the direction Li Yangbing was pointing at. Sure enough, there really was a frost sacred lotus there. A sparkling and translucent lotus flower was growing on top of the ice, but because it was in a corner, it was easy to overlook it. It really is the frost sacred lotus. The sacred frost lotus was a type of medicinal treasure that could increase a cultivator's cultivation and heal injuries. It could be said to be a sacred healing item. Chapter 23:37. In the Shangxian continent, the frozen sacred lotus had always been a priceless treasure. Because such a treasure could save one's life at any time, no matter the price, it was not as important as one's life. Therefore, the frozen sacred lotus had always been priceless. Even at auctions, it was rarely seen. After everyone saw the frozen sacred lotus, their gazes changed. I didn't expect that there would be a frozen sacred lotus here. Everyone's gaze couldn't help but look back and forth between the mysterious ice-cold flame and the frozen sacred lotus. Both of them were extremely precious treasures, but the mysterious ice-cold flame was obviously more valuable. However, none of them had expected that there would be two treasures here. It seemed that this Battle of Zhuolu was indeed worthy of its reputation. Even if they couldn't become famous through this Battle of Zhuolu, just these treasures were enough to raise their strength by another level. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly understood the crux of the matter. Although the frozen sacred lotus was precious, it wasn't like some big powers didn't have it. After all, even without the frozen sacred lotus, there were still some pills that could bring people back to life. However, this mysterious ice-cold flame was different. If a human cultivator absorbed this mysterious ice-cold flame, then their strength would increase greatly, and they would have one more martial arts technique. The benefits were too great. A treasure of this level would be extremely precious, even in a sect or an aristocratic family. Looking at the environment of the ice world in front of her, Bailey Hongzhuang was almost certain that there was only one sacred ice lotus here. It was just that this tree demon was too powerful. It had existed in this Battle of Zhuolu for so many years, and no team had been able to defeat it. As time passed, the environment here actually gave birth to the mysterious ice-cold flame. Only this reason could explain why there were two treasures here. Most likely, even the people from the various big powers didn't know that a mysterious ice-cold flame would be born here. If they knew, they would be heartbroken. Let's smash this mysterious ice-cold flame out of the ice first. Long Xianjing looked around. Obviously, there were only these two treasures in this frozen world. Since they had already found it, then there was no need to waste time. It should be known that the ice-cold fire was in the ice mountain. The ice was extremely thick, and it would take a certain amount of time to get it out. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "Indeed, let's not waste any more time." For a time, 5 cultivators started to chisel the ice, while the other 5 went to pluck the frost saint lotus. After a while, everyone successfully took out the ice-cold fire from the ice. "Young palace master, you can absorb this ice-cold fire." Long Xianjing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. As the young palace mistress of Limitless Palace, she was the one who discovered this treasure first. It was only right for her to absorb it. The other disciples also nodded in agreement. If not for Bailey Hongzhuang discovering the existence of this icy world, they would have completely missed it. The eyes of the 3 beasts were also filled with excitement. If Master could form a contract with this profound ice fire, then he would have another method to deal with Lan Qinyan. However, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Chapter 23:38. As Ling Xiao, Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain amount of experience in grasping people's hearts. Now, all the cultivators in the team were convinced by her. Firstly, It was because of her identity as the young palace master. Secondly, it was because of the strength that she displayed. Perhaps Long Xianjing really thought so. But when Long Xianjing said those words, even if the other cultivators were a little unwilling, they couldn't deny it. They could only follow along. However, after this slight gap appeared, the gap behind would become bigger and bigger. It wouldn't be easy to mend it and become united wholeheartedly. Hearing Bailey Hongshuang's words, everyone was slightly stunned. This kind of attitude was obviously out of everyone's expectations. The profound ice fire, this kind of special flame, has its own intelligence. When it's being absorbed, it will also look for its fated owner. Many times, not everyone who finds the profound ice fire can successfully absorb it. Since we found the profound ice fire together, then we are all fated people. Why don't everyone use a bit of spiritual power to test it out? Whoever the profound ice fire chooses in the end will be the one. How about it? Bailey Hongshuang's lips curved into a faint smile. The profound ice fire was indeed a very precious treasure. But as the young palace master of Limitless Palace, her heart was more important. As long as they could safely return to Limitless Palace this time, then these people in the team would definitely become the mainstay of Limitless Palace in the future, or even become the future elders. No matter who obtains the profound ice fire this time, everyone has to accept this result peacefully. There are many treasures in the Battle of Zhuolu. This is only the first treasure that we found. Who knows? There might be even more treasures in the future. Bailey Hongshuang's voice was gentle. At this kind of time, if the distribution wasn't fair, everyone would have a knot in their heart. After everyone heard Bailey Hongshuang's fair and just words, how could they have any objections? If they couldn't attract the profound ice fire, then it was because their skills weren't as good as others. They couldn't be chosen by the profound ice fire. How could they blame the person who got it? In a moment, everyone's impression of Bailey Hongshuang deepened. Bailey Hongshuang treated them the same as she treated them. If it was another team leader, they might not be able to do what Bailey Hongshuang did. Among all the teams, the sex team might be better. The successor would pay more attention to the opinions of some disciples. As for the cultivation aristocratic families, all of their precious treasures belonged to the next family head. Whatever the next family head was willing to give to the other disciples, it was a kind of reward. After Bailey Hongshuang saw that no one had any objections, she separated a wisp of spiritual power with everyone to touch the profound ice fire. In her previous life, she also knew that there were some special heavenly treasures in this world. They were nurtured by the mysterious power of nature, but she didn't have the luck to encounter them. Since she encountered, naturally, she wanted to absorb of it. As her spiritual power approached the profound ice fire, Bailey Hongshuang felt the strong vitality of the profound ice fire. This kind of vitality was different from the profound ice fire's crumbling appearance. This proved that the profound ice fire looked like this. In fact, it was very strong. Chapter 2339. The three beasts and the other cultivators' contracted beasts were all curiously sizing up the crowd. No one would know the result until the very end. This kind of thing did not completely depend on one's ability. It depended on who was more fated with the ice-cold fire. Xiao Bai sure, do you think Master will succeed? Xiao He said slowly. This ice-cold fire looks like a treasure. It's hard to say, but with Master's ability, I think it shouldn't be a problem. Xiao Bai said after some thought. Master was not an ordinary person. Along the way, Master had created many miracles. What do you mean by shouldn't be a problem? Bai Shi frowned unhappily. It definitely won't be a problem. Bai Shi believed in Bailey Hongshuang's ability the most. He was different from Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Xiao He and Xiao Bai had transmigrated together with Bailey Hongshuang. They'd seen many things and did not comment on many things. Bai Shi had been following Bailey Hongshuang ever since he opened his eyes. Along the way, Bai Shi had a blind admiration for Bailey Hongshuang. His master was invincible. No one could compare to Master. Bai Shi would not be nice to anyone who doubted his master. Xiao He and Xiao Bai shrunk their necks when they saw Bai Shi's expression. It was not that they did not believe in Master's ability. It was just that this kind of luck did not completely depend on one's ability. As everyone's mental strength came into contact with the ice-cold fire, the ice-cold fire became even more violent. It did not expect so many people to surround it. Obviously, after being surrounded like this, there was almost no chance for it to escape. However, flames were wild and untamed. They would not be tamed so easily. The ice-cold fire quickly began to burn, intending to use this method to stop everyone from absorbing it. After the ice-cold fire struggled wildly, the flame would burn their mental strength if they were not careful. Under such a situation, some cultivators could not help but withdraw from the competition. It was a very uncomfortable feeling to have one's mental strength burned by the flame. One after another, the cultivators withdrew. However, the few cultivators who were at the front of the pack continued to persevere. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If he didn't experience a period of suffering and pain, how could he absorb the ice-cold fire? In order to cultivate to this stage, everyone had experienced many difficulties and obstacles. Most of the time, they had to grit their teeth and persevere to achieve success. If he gave up, he would have nothing left. The ice-cold fire struggled crazily. However, it was not an adult ice-cold fire. It was just born not long ago. After struggling for a while, the ice-cold fire also lost its strength, but these people's spiritual power was still trying to bind it. The ice fire understood that this time, it really couldn't escape. However, it still had a choice. Thinking of this, the icy cold fire directly approached a wisp of mental strength that was slightly gentler. A moment later, Bailey Hongzhuang, Long Xianjing, and the others opened their eyes at the same time. The final result was out. A group of contract beasts and the cultivators who withdrew from the competition all looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in confusion. They did not know who had succeeded in the end. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang. "I need to go into seclusion to refine for a while. Can everyone rest here for a while?" Chapter 2340. Young Palace Master, you could go ahead and refine it. We will cultivate here. Long Xianjing laughed. Although the profound ice fire chose Bailey Hongzhuang in the end, everyone was convinced, because they all had a chance to work hard. Yes, young Palace Master, you can refine it first. Everyone nodded. Their faces were full of support. However, at this moment, everyone's support came from the bottom of their hearts. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous actions had convinced them. No matter who in the team obtained the profound ice fire, they would need some time to refine it. What was the point of waiting here for a while? Thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang cupped her fists and smiled. Then, she walked to the side and sat cross-legged. She had just absorbed the profound ice fire, but the profound ice fire was still not obedient. It was burning in her body and destroying her body. Therefore, she needed to refine the profound ice fire as soon as possible and merge with it. Then, this problem would not occur again. As Bailey Hongzhuang began to refine the profound ice fire, everyone found a place to sit down and cultivate. This place was extremely cold. Even though everyone was wearing clothes to resist the cold, there was still cold air invading their bodies. However, staying here, they did not need to worry about people or demonic beast sneak attacks. At least, before they went out, this place was extremely safe. After cultivating for a while, everyone was surprised to find that cultivating here had unexpectedly good results. The ice group here has built an ice room environment. Cultivating here can actually increase everyone's strength. After pondering for a moment, Long Xianjing understood the reason behind it and immediately explained it to everyone. The ice here was not ordinary ice. It was extremely precious. It was a pity that this place could not be taken away. Otherwise, cultivating here would be beneficial to everyone's strength. After discovering this point, all the cultivators began to cultivate seriously. The three beasts guarded beside Bailey Hongzhuang. They did not know how long it would take for their master to refine the profound ice fire. However, the environment here was not bad, so they were not in a hurry to leave. When Bailey Hongzhuang stopped cultivating, it was already 7 days later. In these 7 days, everyone witnessed Bailey Hongzhuang's breakthrough and improvement. The profound ice fire was a treasure. Once it was used by a cultivator, it would increase the cultivator's strength. At Bailey Hongzhuang's level, it would take a long time to increase one level. However, after absorbing the profound ice fire, her strength increased directly. It was really enviable. The moment Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes, a nearly transparent flame appeared in her eyes, and in a short moment, it had already dissipated. Looking at everyone who was cultivating, Bailey Hongzhuang said, "Everyone has waited for me for so long. We can set off now." After breaking through, Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her spirit was extremely good. The sparkling luster on her face was even more beautiful. Seeing this, Long Xianjing and the others also stood up. "Congratulations, young palace master." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "It's all thanks to everyone. Young palace master, how do we deal with this cold, ice sacred lotus?"